we'll go over to my screen. Okay, I guess we are now live on my end.
All good, all good.
Fully live, fully live. Fully live. Oh, ads are about to start on my end though, so RIP.
Yeah.
RIP to my folks. RIP to my folks. Yes, it sounds like I am still muted on your end.
I have fixed it. I've just turned it on. That always has a bit of a, it always has a slight delay for them.
That happens. Yeah, it always takes a moment to. Okay, excellent. Ah, the shared chat is so lovely. I always enjoy the shared chat.
It is a nice feature. It's one of like the better features they've put in.
Legitimately, my complaint about shared chat and about Stream Together is that they don't make it like simpler on our end. Like legitimately, that's my complaint. Is it's like you should make this more seamless. Like I just want it to be like. I want us to be able to set it up before we hit go live, and then it's just like as soon as we hit go live, it's done.
Yeah. Did they? Do they have it where like the ads are coordinated? That's actually kind of nice.
I think it's just a matter of the fact that we timed in on 3, 2, 1. I think that's what happened.
Could be.
I don't think we did that. I don't think that's like a feature. I think that was us being clever. I think that was on our end. Why does our guest tonight look like Lewis from FF14? I was not expecting that, especially because I don't know that character from Final Fantasy 14. I've played 14.
He's the like really old elf from the original game who died to put the Bahamut in the big prison. Like the events that lead into a Realm Reborn.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely don't know that then, because I only played post a Realm. I only started playing once a Realm Reborn came out, and I skipped a lot of cutscenes. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh yeah.
If you
skipped the cutscenes, then you'll miss them.
I skipped a lot of cutscenes. If a cutscene starts with like 5 seconds of dead air, I'm like, oh, this isn't an important cutscene. Which in Final Fantasy 14 is like almost all of them. It is not.
But hey, you got through it in a reasonable time frame. I think I'm almost 2 years in, and I just got to the start of Stormblood because I to say that I've been taking my time is a grotesque understatement.
I know that I have unpopular Final Fantasy 14 opinions. I know that I've got deeply unpopular opinions on it, which is I pretty much only like Tataru and Hildebrand. I pretty much like no other characters.
That is genuinely fascinating to me.
I think, well, here's a funny experience to me was I was playing with 2 different groups of people, right? One was like my high school bros, my bro guys that I grew up with, and the other was like some people who were just like thank you for the follow. The other were some like just nerds, right? Like some nerds that I knew from online who were like really into the storyline. We're not broy about it at all. And so, remember the Vault?
Yes, from Heavensward?
Yes, from Heavensward. And so there's a I'm going to try to talk around a spoiler there, but there's a character death at the Vault.
Right, yes.
So my friends who like got me to play Final Fantasy 14 and like really like Final Fantasy 14 as a storyline and are really invested in it, they were just very much like they were like really broken up about this character's death, and this was like a character that they like made fan art of and was like one of their favorites. And then like I did the Vault with my broy group of friends when I was doing through it for MSQ, and we got to the character's death, and my friends from my friends who I grew up with were like, "Who the hell is that guy?"
Oh my god.
They're just like, yeah, they just like introduce a random character that just randomly dies for no apparent reason.
Who's this?
Who's this?
Why is everyone so broken up over this random character?
Yeah, it was a really funny contrast between the 2 groups. It was a very, but yeah, this is not a FF14 style character Fugi. This is a Coffin of Andy and Lele style Fugi. So I was very surprised.
That's just Hawk's been suffering through Final Fantasy alongside me, so his brain's just his brain is just ruined.
Okay.
That probably.
I have much worse Fugis that I can subject you to. This is like definitely my most professional looking Fugi. I've got vile.
It's
Fugis.
nice. It's a nice one.
I'm gonna go to one of my favorite ones, and I'm not going to stick on it for long because it actually gives people motion sickness, which is deeply funny to me. So I'm just gonna stick on it for a few minutes. But
why does he constantly reset? He just keeps coming down from the heavens.
Yeah, you know, it's a loop.
Endlessly.
It's a loop of a pretty simple animation, of a looming animation. It's apparently apparently it gives people an absolute headache that it doesn't just loop, actually, that it goes back, that like the static image is just a middle of the animation.
That's very funny.
It's dreadful. It's dreadful. I like it a lot. I like the sock a lot. I have a fully rigged Live 2D sock. But we'll go to the Andy and Lele one's definitely the most professional. Let's go with the Gremlin one for a minute. This one's nice. I kind of like this one. We'll be on the Gremlin.
I need to let's see. I need to grab a random image. Here we go. I'm gonna slap it on my stream. The way it has your name on it. So if someone walks into my stream, they're like, what the hell is happening?
Oh, the sock broke on my end. What the heck is going on here? Oh, I see what happened there. Dang it. Live 2D, always fighting us. This is the true hell of being a VTuber is VTube Studio.
That software looms in my future, but I have thus far avoided using it.
I have to express a lot of appreciation for the fact that it is technically free and it's only a few dollars to like remove the watermark and blah blah blah, and it does some really impressive stuff. I do not like that it just like randomly, it just like doesn't use right-click context for anything.
Really?
It's like somebody used the interface for doing things on an iPhone, but then made a desktop app with the assumption that you were like using a stylus or something. Is baffling.
Oh,
it's just like every second of using it is fighting you. And Hawk Oddly, thank you for the follow. And yes, I was a professor. That may as well introduce myself. I've been really. Oh
yeah, I guess we could think about doing those kinds of things.
We could think about doing things the appropriate way. Yes. So for the chatters, my name is Almantas. I am a former professor of sociology. That's not a bit. That is just literally a job I held. And now I am anime online for money, and I mostly do calligraphy and miniatures painting.
Real quick, do you have a favorite font? That is
Georgia.
A vaguely normal font?
Georgia,
okay.
Georgia, failing that Palatino, or Garamond. But yeah, that's, and Sotek has invited me on here very generously to for some of my opinions.
Yeah, we had we got to have like a really awesome conversation at Off Guy that was very random, and
yes
the whole thing came up. It was like, it's one of those things where if you were watching as a show, you'd be like, well, okay, that was all arbitrary and happened for no reason.
yeah. No, it was perfect. It was the sort of thing that if you made me a showrunner would happen like at least 2 or 3 times an episode, which is why I'm not allowed to be a showrunner. Among many other better reasons.
Because when I think about it, it was like I ran into Inari and them first.
Yep.
And I had a chat with them, and then they were like, I saw the cool calligraphy thing you had done on their badges. I was like, where'd you get those? And they were like, oh, do you know Almantas? I was like, no, should I? And they were like, yeah. If you see him, like, he does these. And I was like, oh, those are like super cool. And then we just bumped into each other at
Hazmat's panel. It was Hazmat's panel. And everybody, all of the rest of our friends sat in the front, and they ran out of space. The two of us went to the back.
Space for us.
They didn't have space for us, so me and Sotek went to the back. And so me and Sotek during Haz's panel, because I have horrible ADHD, so I will just talk during the middle of a panel with other people, which is why it's good that we weren't in the front. I asked Sotek some questions, and we had a very good conversation. We'll probably recap that conversation here shortly, but we haven't had the chance for Sotek to introduce himself.
Oh yeah, yeah. I guess I should do that too. Hello there. Hi, I am Loremaster of Sotek. Normally, I am made of the substance we commonly refer to as flesh, but in this instance, I decided it'd be more fitting to just do my PNG tuber form because, you know, when in Rome.
When in
But
Rome. When in Rome.
I don't get to use this guy as much as I would love to. So it's I always love having the opportunity to be little guy as he's known.
I love the little guy. I think this is an extremely good one. I am a huge fan. I'm a huge fan.
He's lovely. For those that don't know me, I am considered one of the premier authorities on Warhammer Fantasy lore and literature, and I've been working with it for it's 2025 now, so about 23 years, 24 years, almost quarter century.
Okay. That's so that means that we started touching Warhammer at about the same time.
Yeah, probably around like actually no, probably yeah. Because I started in about 2002.
Mm-hmm. I think I was slightly later than that, but not that much later. And the bigger difference here is that I just painted several hundred Skaven and then stopped thinking about the game for decades.
I mean, honestly, that's the more mentally healthy way to approach it.
Probably. I mean, I would say if you are interested in getting into Warhammer in any way, shape, or form, don't start with Skaven. Just from
Skaven they're so fun.
Skaven are so fun, but just from a sheer like repetitive stress injury perspective.
The actual hobby. Yeah, no.
Yeah, just a and it was kind of fortunate because I picked them because I found a lot of their like I am like a gameplay guy. I'm a Johnny in the Magic the Gathering sense, where like, is this mechanically interesting to me? Does this like tickle a little part of my brain where I want to play with the mechanics? And Skaven really hit that for me, where it's like this move fast, fragile army that relies on like weird technical tricks and like lots of units that die in droves but have like heavy artillery backup. That was all like very appealing to me. And then I did not realize this at the time because I did not that in the edition I was playing in, which was mostly 6th, they were really busted. They were like really good.
They had a lot of really solid shenanigans going for them, though.
Really, yeah.
It was also very possible for them to just like decide to explode themselves.
Oh yeah. No, it was. I mean, a lot of like the proper way to play. Like it was one of those armies where this is just like a common Warhammer balance thing that. We'll probably go back to this again and again because I'm more from like I like reading like the competitive reports, and the thing that stands out to me with Warhammer as a system is that the guys at Games Workshop just kind of choose points values based on vibes. And
yeah,
compared to like Infinity, for example, where there's like a calculator, and so much of the game is just like, are things underpriced? That's like a huge percentage of the game balance is like, did they fuck up and just make something that should be 50 points worth 20 points? And then you just buy all of those. And because Skaven have such like a weird and wide-ranging roster at that time with such like strange options, they had several things that were just like, oh, this shouldn't cost this much. this was not fair. This was deeply unfair.
Just remember, kids, models are forever, rules are temporary.
This is true. This is true. This is extremely true. And this is, I mean, I now in my age, I view this as a painting hobby, right? I am viewing this as a handicraft hobby. I'm not really playing the game very much. I just want to paint minis. I just want to paint minis and see what happens and get my hands some exercise. But that's not really what we're here about. We are here about the ideas underneath those, like that are deeper than the rules and deeper than the minis. We are here about the books, the underlying books.
Yeah, especially as Warhammer has had such a fascinating evolution in like the public discourse and like cultural zeitgeist, it's
Mhm.
only grown bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh my goodness.
In spite of itself in many ways, which is very funny.
I find it deeply funny because, again, I started at roughly the same time as you, and a lot of the people I know who are invested in Warhammer in my daily life they're grognards. Is that a term that people still use anymore? Am I like really showing
Yes,
my age
that is
saying
still
that I'm using-
100%. If you're old enough to know that word, then you have the right to use it in this community. You
All right. Yeah,
that's still the official term for old Hammer players.
Okay, hold on. I do have to apologize. I forgot to disable some of my redeems on my end. So I'm going to disable those right now, but somebody did redeem a rather disruptive one. And I will refund it if it's a problem, but somebody did redeem me calling them good girl in ASMR voice.
I mean, hey, you do whatever. I mean,
Okay, I will do it. It'll be the last one for the stream. So
you earned that bank. You earned that bank, King. You earned that bank.
Tim Shelser, you've been a very good girl. All right.
Wow, very spoiled.
Yeah. I think I'm alright at that. But it's kind of not the vibe we're going. This is more of a podcast about Warhammer. This is a little bit more.
My chat. I will never call you good. Never, ever, never once.
I'm a softie. I want to be nice to everybody. I'm a softie. Yes. Well, Hawk Oddly, you followed me, so you will get to do that on streams where I'm not in a collab. When I'm in a collab, I try to not have some of the more disruptive redeems on.
Satch. You all know what you did. I'm not explaining things here.
But yeah, so one of the things that is interesting to me about hanging out with grogs is that from the grog's perspective, everything that changes about the game is a mistake. Right? Because that's kind of their deal.
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, like, why are they making these Primaris Marines? It's just like a waste of time that alienates their old heads. Why are they doing this, that, or the other thing? It just alienates people. They should only focus on, like, recapitulating the things that I'm nostalgic for. And in the case of... This is true of almost every game that has, like, a really old community. But in the case of Warhammer, it feels particularly insane because Warhammer's, what, like, 10 times the size it was 10 years ago?
Oh yeah, at least.
Like at least. Like it's Warhammer has grown explosively. Like I could be convinced that Warhammer has sold more models since 2020 than they sold between 1980 and 2000.
Yeah, there's like, definitely a thing where it in many ways kind of stagnated going into like the 2000s and the early 2010s. Yeah. But then something, I'm not exactly sure what, but something happened.
I have a hypothesis. And my hypothesis is that they got very loose, some might even say slutty, about their IP.
Yeah, that's very true. The video game started getting bigger.
Yeah, I would even specifically say Vermintide was like a
especially for fantasy. Vermintide and Total War, I mean, literally brought it back from the dead.
It's one of those things that like I mean this is something that is like the hateful thing for grognards to accept, and you might hate me saying this, so feel free to tell me I'm an asshole on this one, but Warhammer Fantasy Battles going into when Age of Sigmar was released, Warhammer Fantasy Battles was dead. It was dead. Like I like to say it was in a weird place that was uncomfortable because it was caught between a rock and a hard place of trying to it was attempting to incentivize an old returning audience that, especially with how things were going economically in the world at the time, it was trying to incentivize an audience that already had everything they wanted to buy new stuff, while also attempting to incentivize a brand new audience to come in. And 8th edition had the exact wrong rule set to do it with. Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah.
And oh my god, they shot themselves in the kneecap.
It is interesting to me, like, I'm talking to you, and I don't think you're an old school player. I don't get the impression that you're like a bitter grog about it, because I've seen you be like interestingly critical about it. Whereas like some of my friends who like I get beers with are like really bitter grogs about it, and they're just like, but so I get this so like dual perspective on it. The way they have never quite gotten over how badly botched AOS 1.0 was, and it was.
Oh yeah,
like
big time.
Age of Sigmar 1 was very badly botched, but every indication I've gotten about Age of Sigmar 2 and 3 is that they've been perfectly solid product launches that have sold well and have a loyal, if much smaller than 40K audience.
Yeah, I've never been shy about saying that I hated first edition AOS.
No, it was terribly written. Like,
yeah, it was horrible, and like not only as like a oh my god, I can't believe this is what they replaced fantasy with fan, but just as a how am I supposed to play a game when there's no rules? Like, what am I doing here?
This is actually like an interesting thing to me as like a rules nerd, as like a guy who really likes looking at rules and stuff. Is and this is a place where like I will like flat on like into like fist fights with D&D fans over is like there's a point where you have too few rules for the game to become playable.
Yeah, well, the best way I can describe it for anyone that plays, I'll give like a D&D example and a Magic the Gathering example because those are very popular for people that don't know Warhammer. Is Age of Sigmar basically had the equivalent of like imagine you showed up to play Magic the Gathering with a bunch of people and you were used to the old way. You were used to the way like Commander was played. And then you show up and the store tells you, okay, the new rule is that all of these cards do have rules, but there is no maximum deck size. You may draw however many cards you want per turn. And those are the only rules.
Yeah. I mean, I think
like,
that
other than what's like written on the cards, but like there's no structure to anything outside of the cards. The moment you are like, well, how do my cards interact? There's no structure there.
Yeah, well, the fundamental bad rule for Age of Sigmar was they're like, oh, it's too competitive to give explicit point values and a point budget. Just like negotiate with the people that you play with on like what you think a fair army is. Yeah, which is so much harder.
Have they met people that play competitive tabletop games?
Well, they didn't want to. They want to like not really have the competitive scene. But the problem is that like the Magic the Gathering equivalent to this, to my mind, is every time you play Magic cards don't have a mana cost, and every time you play a card, you and your opponent negotiate on how much mana it should cost.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a much there you go. That's
which is awful, right? Like, just nightmarishly more complicated than actually having the rules. And the thing, again, I say about a lot of tabletop games is like, no, the reason why I paid for a rule book was so that I would know what the rules are and so that me and my players and the GM wouldn't have to negotiate every single thing.
Yeah, and for D&D, like the idea of like, here's a goblin, let's all discuss together, players and GM, what should a goblin be capable of?
Mm-hmm. And again, there's games where like that level of discussion is built in and baked in and like makes sense. Warhammer's not that.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, it's and granted, this all boils down to the GW we had at the time, which was GW at its absolute worst, was the GW that was convinced that, oh, we're a model selling company, nothing else. Which like we sell tabletop minis and everything else is irrelevant.
Which is foolish, right? Which is very foolish. And like I play other tabletop war games, and I'm on record. My favorite one's Infinity. And Infinity has its own strategy. Every one of these companies that does these tabletop war games has their own kind of strategy around like how much are we selling minis, how much are we selling rules, how much are we selling events, how much are we selling books. And particularly in the case of Warhammer Fantasy Battles and Warhammer 40K, they're selling everything. And it's essential to the drive. I would even say what drives demand for the models is the rule set. Yeah,
and the story building, the lore around them.
Yeah. I feel like those are. Again, I'm kind of like gameplay focused first, so it's not too surprising that I said that. Like it's the rules that drive it, and then like you have these books that create context for the rules, and they even create demand towards those rules, right? Because if you get into your Sisyphus Cain books or whatever it is, you don't want to be like, okay, so I like this Cain character, but I feel like Infinity or something else would be like a better fit for the kind of stories I want to play. It's like, no, he's a 40K character. I want to play 40K. If you are, even if it like you're looking at like I can't even name any fantasy characters. I'm thinking about the one that's basically like Farford and Grey Mouser, but Warhammerified.
Don't know what that is.
Oh, God damn it. That's old. That's like 40s. That's like 40s fantasy that I was bringing up there. But there's, like, if you're reading these characters that are like inquisitors in the Imperium and stuff in the Empire.
Yeah, like you're witch hunters. Yeah.
Gotrek and Felix. Yes, it's Gotrek and Felix. Yeah. Thank you, Tony.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. They're functionally Grey Mouser and Grey Mouser and Farford. But yeah, if you're reading these characters that are set in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, you don't go, well, I'll just play like Conquest Last Argument of Kings and just pretend that they're Warhammer characters. Like, no, that's not what happens. Like, no.
Right.
People don't do that. Maybe a handful of very imaginative people do that, but it's people want to, they get invested in the stories, and that makes them feel like the underlying gameplay of it might be cool, and then that gets them invested in the models. So if you're going to sell the models, you need those other things as advertising for the models. And there are companies that just sell models out there. They just sell generic models, and they are not charging GW as premium.
No, and I think that the biggest thing as well is like how absurdly expensive GW stuff is. Of that.
Oh yeah.
If you're paying those prices, you're doing something with those models. Like you can't just buy them to be like, I will build and paint this and put it on a shelf and then never do anything with it ever again. That's no. You're paying to say, oh, I'm going to be going to play tabletop games with these that take multiple hours to play. I'm going to be traveling to tournaments. Even if I'm not necessarily a super competitive player, I'm still going to travel to those tournaments to participate in the painting side of it. But I'm going to be playing the game. Like, I'm not just buying these minis.
Definitely coming for me here, the guy who definitely does just buy them to do that. But I will confess, like, I tend to paint a lot more generic minis than Warhammer specific minis. And two, I acknowledge that I am paying for the fact that as content creation, people care about the Warhammer branding.
Yeah, well, and it's like, you're also, it's GW is relying on those whales, the people that are buying entire armies as soon as they release, because they want to take them to tournaments. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and it's, God, the tournament scene is so radically different than it was when we were younger.
It's so genuinely bonkers now.
It's bonkers. It's one of those things like I've like trouble explaining to people when like I talk to people who aren't really like watching it and just kind of are vaguely aware of the hobby, or like, again, the grogs that I know, and they're like, oh, it can't be like Warhammer's made all these missteps. Warhammer's made all these missteps. They've all these stupid things that I hate. They must be like dying. And I'm like, okay, so when we were playing, there were like 10 grand tournaments per year. There's like that many per weekend now.
Yeah, well, like, it's like the biggest example I can give is that back in my day, it was, you would get an army and you'd play at your local things, and there would be a locally organized GT maybe in your state, or if you were really lucky, maybe in like your region of the US.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like there is legit right now for 40K Old World and Age of Sigmar, there is a UN tournament that meets every year in Europe, and there is a year-long competition to prove that you're good enough to be invited as one of the representatives of your country for the next year's tournament.
It's impressive. It's impressive. The thing that I like to... Oh, I need to disable that one. Holy crap. I'm not doing calligraphy today. The one that I think about a lot as a truly extreme difference between now and back then is... Well, actually, here's what I point out, is that like when people talk about how expensive Warhammer is, if you're just buying models casually and playing at like a pretty casual level, it's actually not that expensive as hobbies go. Like, it's my metric that I use for an expensive hobby is like, it has to be more expensive than being a smoker. Because I worked in the welfare.
That's actually a very interesting way to look at that.
I worked in the welfare system for a long time. I did a lot of work with like social services. And when you're talking to people who are like on the verge of homelessness and are regularly burning through $15 a day on cigarettes, like that kind of calibrates that as like you're kind of like, this isn't that expensive of a hobby. And most Warhammer players I know are spending like $100-$200 a year
Yeah, well, it's like if you meet the really responsible players, and granted, there are responsible players that spend a lot of money because it's literally the only thing they have, which we'll
Yeah.
talk about those people later.
Yeah.
But it's it's like if you're like, I'm gonna buy a mini or a unit and I'm not gonna buy anything else until I'm done painting this,
Yeah.
then it will be a very reasonably priced hobby for you.
Yes. It's genuinely the way that Warhammer becomes an incredibly expensive hobby is if you are one of the top tournament players, because then you are spending airplane tickets and hotel prices.
Yeah, well,
that's
and
where you really get murdered.
I know some people who are like, they, that is their hobby, their only hobby. It's the only thing they do outside of like work and stuff is they play competitive. So for them, the rule, like whenever a new army gets released or the rules change or whatever, they will literally buy a brand new army from scratch, which is going to be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Then they are often not big painters, and they're working on a very strict time crunch. So then they pay other people in the community to paint their minis for them to a good tournament standard, because in many grand tournaments, your painting score contributes to your overall score. So you need to have a really pretty army. You can't it can't just be like you paint them all 2 colors and you're done. No, they need to be immaculate. So then you're paying someone thousands of dollars to paint them with a rush fee. And so then you're spending like 10K plus a year on tournament stuff.
I knew a couple of the people who are on the painting side of that, who like this was their day job, right? Their day job was to make high quality tournament minis to flip. Right, they would buy models slowly over the course of the year, and then whenever there was a big meta shift, they would make thousands and thousands of dollars shifting, Iron Hands or whatever that nobody cared about 2 weeks ago. And it was really, it's a really fascinating ecosystem to even exist at all. But like, if you are one of the people who like this is your hobby, like that adds up a lot. But if you're treating the game pretty casually, it's just I just am not impressed by somebody spending $100, $200 a year on a hobby. It's like five video games. It's not really that big of a deal.
That's not bad by any means. When a lot of people talk about expensive hobbies, it's usually in the sense of like, oh, well, if you're gonna go buy an army all at once, or if you have bad impulse control, which GW will happily take advantage of.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Vera, thank you for the raid. Really appreciate it. Thank you. We're chatting about Warhammer stuff. Also, this is Almantas. He's super cool. Hello there.
Vera fucking knows. Vera knows who I am.
Vera knows. Okay, cool.
Vera knows who I am. Me and Vera were up till 7 a.m. drinking one night at Off Guys, so...
Wow, never mind then.
Yeah, Vera rules. I love Vera. Vera, I'm a huge Vera fan.
Yeah, Vera's gonna be coming on to Lorebeards very soon to chat about Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, so that should be fun.
Absolutely, yeah. No. I remember talking with Vera, and like she let slip that was like what she does, and I was like, okay, you got to meet Sotek. Like me and some other people, we got to get these two people together.
It's
like,
we gotta small world.
It was just fun because like the like there was a point where I was like, these guys might already know each other, and we might be being embarrassing. Vera streams. Vera streams.
It's super cool. It made me I was like, that's how I know Warhammer Fantasy has officially reached a new generation. One of the writers is a VTuber. That we made it. We made it, guys. We made it, dudes.
But yeah, no. Vera's one of the coolest people. I'm so glad. I'm so glad she's here. I'm shy. Ridiculous. But yeah. What was I going to say? But yeah, this is. I do find the business side of this really interesting, and the. Oh, hold on. Do you want to get your spiel in for the Raiders?
Oh, well, I mean, technically they rated me. Oh yeah, you're right. I should do that. Just in case you're new around here. Hi, hello. I'm Loremaster of Sotek, considered one of the premier authorities on Warhammer Fantasy lore and literature. I work with a lot of the various companies that do stuff with Warhammer Fantasy, so I'm heavily involved with aspects of the various video games, and I've been involved in fan projects, and I've been involved in the older roleplay stuff and some of the newer roleplay stuff, and I try and get around and help out a lot of stuff where I can. I do a Warhammer Fantasy podcast every Sunday and Wednesday when Andy is not being visited by Grandfather Nurgle. And yeah, and I recently met a bunch of cool, awesome people at Offkai, which is what led to this, and it's super awesome and cool. Also, normally I'm a flesh tuber, but today we're doing VTuber special, so here we are.
Yeah, I am a VTuber. I'm fleshless. So this is where
it's true. I met him and he was 2D. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's a very
it was very impressive.
Yeah, it's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That's what Offkai's like.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Toontown from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. If you didn't know, that's just real. That's just real.
That movie still is like so amazing, but I'm gonna stop before I get on a tangent.
I watched it again recently, so it's on the mind. But yeah, it's so yeah, I guess this is the time when we get to introduce like what our actual, because I ran out of I forgot what we were talking about right before this. The thing that we talked about, that Sotek and I talked about, that I thought was super interesting. I thought this was a very good conversation. Was changes to the Kislevian lore.
Yeah. So something that is kind of memed about, but there's a genuine discussion we had about it, which me and Almantas ended up having, which was super cool, is how does real world politics affect Warhammer lore?
Yes. And you are talking to I'm a sociologist by training, right? And so to me, and my other work I do is pretty political. And so to me, it's very obvious, right, that like any artistic work has a political angle to it. That even if the artist did not intend to do it, they were probably thinking about something political when they wrote it. And people in the political sphere are going to figure out an interpretation. It's very, very difficult to make something.
But there's no politics in my video games.
One that I think about that is one of the ones that I had a very interesting discussion about a few months ago with Mr. Clonk was the story King of Elfland's Daughter, which he thought of as a like totally apolitical type of work. And I'm like, no. Like this author is heavily invested at the time. This was a pre-Lord of the Rings fantasy novel. Lord of the Rings was heavily based on King of Elfland's Daughter, and the author from it was an Irishman during the time of Irish independence who had like real strong opinions about Irish nationalism and Irish cultural specificity and the unification versus republic question. And like you can see it in the work. You can see that these concerns over who gets to be a member of which community were weighing on his mind in this story, and like what is tradition, and these are things that matter for Irish political unification. And you brought up the case of this thing with Kislev. There's this there's this change that GW's been doing with Kislev. Do you want to give the people the summary?
Yeah, so to set the stage, Kislev in Warhammer Fantasy is in the Northern Old World. They're right up in the Northern Oblast, and they take a lot of they've been around for a while, but they kind of bounced from vague author to vague author about like not really getting dialed in until a series of books came out, which was The Riders of the Dead, which then led into them finally getting some further expansion in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition by a group of authors for a supplement book that was released called Realms of the Ice Queen, where they really delved in addition to Kislev getting some slight support during Warhammer Fantasy 6th edition primarily, where they played a major role with kind of their own group of units. Like you had like Tsar Boris and Tsarina Katerin, and then you had a couple of other like little units running around, but they were very much kind of off to the side. But Realms of the Ice Queen did a really big deep dive into them, and what they basically they were very, very heavily inspired by a mixture of Eastern European and Russian themes. And the big thing to keep in mind whenever you're looking at Warhammer is that while many of the factions will be inspired by some real world stuff, they're not they weren't created by like hardcore historians. Most of them were created by a group of British guys that were hanging out in an office that had a very vague understanding of a lot of things and relied very heavily on like stereotypes and very like simplistic understandings of things, especially back in the older days before the internet and stuff. because some people would get caught up on like, oh, well, this is like a 1-to-1 of like the Empire's Holy Roman Empire. It's like, no, there are themes, but don't get too caught up on the 1-to-1 or you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
But Kislev, as it further developed, especially in second edition, got understood as basically there's this great oblast in the north that acts as the bulwark for the nations of men down the south, where you have like Kislev, and then south of that is the Empire, and then over to the west you have Bretonnia, and down you have Tulea and Estalia, which the Empire is very German, Holy Roman Empire theme. Bretonnia is very Arthurian legend, but they're French. Estalia is like Spain, then Tulea is very heavily inspired by Italy, and with some Greek influence as well. But up in Kislev, basically what they landed on, and what Kislev came to be understood as for a generation and up until very, very recently. So like for the last 20 years, Kislev was basically, you had this large nation in the frozen oblasts and some of the steppes where there was several tribes of humans, but the most dominant of which were known as the Ungol people. And the Ungol people basically lived, they tended to live very rurally. They relied riding on horseback and staying very nomadic in order to stay ahead of like the harsh winters. But they set up a couple of like notable cities and fortresses. And that was life for them. They relied on worshiping they had some gods that they worshipped. And there was a mysterious entity that empowered some women among them to become known as the hags. The hags of Kislev. And the hag witches are these women that would trade their youth to spirits in exchange for power and basically for the spirits to help them and aid them in various ways. And they acted as the protection. So you had the hag mothers of the Ungol people.
Yeah.
But years later, about a little over, I want to say like 1500 years-ish, before kind of the quote-unquote modern Warhammer Fantasy timeline, a new group of humans invaded from the northeast. So coming out of the eastern steppe and around the Chaos Waste came these people known as the Gospodars. And the Gospodars basically invaded, being led by their conqueen Mishka, who was the first of the Ice Queens, the Ice Witches, who heard the call of a mysterious entity that she knew as Mother Kislev. And she showed up with this new crazy form of ice magic, and she basically kicked ass and chewed bubblegum and absolutely just massacred everybody. And the Gospodarians took over. So they kicked the crap out of the Ungols, pushed them all the way back to the ocean, and forced them to surrender. And then they went over to dominate the other tribes, such as the Ropsmen and several other smaller groups. And the Gospodarians basically were a conquering tribe that then took over and became what we can understand as a noble class that then built all of these great cities, such as building the city of Kislev, or Kislev City as it's known, not to be confused with Kislev itself, which is the country. And then you also had them reinforcing the cities they took from the Ungols, such as Eringrad and Prague. But then many, many years passed, and we got to the modern setting, which was that the Gospodars were the ruling elite. They were primarily in the cities, and they had a very strong structure. They had like a royal bloodline, such as the Boca line, and they had the Ice Court, which was dominated by these ice witches who used their magic to try and control political things, and they were very urban, and they had a lot of social clash with the other major parts of Kislev, which were mostly made up of the Ungol people, which the Ungol people preferred to live out of the cities and stay more closely connected to their roots, which involved them living out in the oblasts and in the various forests and steppes, listening to the wisdom of the Hag Mothers and staying more in connection with the spirits of the land. And there was conflict between them because often the Ungols did not like the Gospodars and didn't like being told what to do by them. And the Gospodars saw the Ungols as unruly, and because of their more rural, superstitious nature, they saw them as being more susceptible to the corruption of chaos and yada, yada, yada. And it caused all these really, really interesting clashes. And by the time Warhammer Fantasy blew up, while they were known as the nation of Kislev, Kislev was more accurately a group of two predominant tribes with several smaller tribes beneath them, and it had a very intrinsic nature of groups of conquered peoples and how they related to and dealt with a group of conquerors, even though their peoples had been intermixing for 1,500 years.
So, to talk a little bit about, so I know that we don't want to get too caught up on like doing like one-to-one real world stuff, because the writers are generally not working with this as trying to create historical analogies, which as a history nerd here, I don't think they should. Right. I don't think that's a good way to write fantasy.
Right. I think sometimes when they have, it works. Sometimes it blows up in their face.
Sometimes it blows up in their face. There's a lot of reasons not to. And part of it is just that it just is like, there's definitely a point where it's like, why not just read a history book? Is definitely going to become a bit of a problem if you do too much of that. But there is parts of this that I think are thematically useful for thinking about what they're representing, right? Because they are representing Russia and Central Asia. And my understanding of the Kislevians as it started out from the writer's standpoint is they started off from a bunch of stereotypes about the Cossack peoples.
Yeah, and they had whenever they would like name their units and their characters and stuff, like you would have Cossacks as one of like the unit types. And then you had like the winged lancers, which are very heavily inspired from the winged hussars is what heavily inspired those, which was funny because then the writers found this funny. They found there's a goofy story about how basically someone sent in a letter and asked, well, okay, like how did the winged lancers come up with the idea to have like the wings that like, do the whistling when they charge to make them all scary and stuff? And they didn't have an answer. So the writers had to sit down and figure out where they got the idea from to do that. And they ended up blaming it on centaurs, funny enough. But you had things like, they're ruled by the czars, and they have the Bokas, and that during the Great War Against Chaos, you have the oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. What's their name? What's the super famous Russian family?
The Romanovs?
Yes, the Romanovs, but it's spelled different.
The Romanovs. The Womanovs, the Lomanovs.
Yeah. So you have the Romanovs. Yeah. And there's a lot of like bear motifs. So there's a great bear god, Urson, and then you've got like the thunder god Thor and the fire god Daz. And there's all these different little elements that if you look at, you're like, oh, I know where this is from, but these aren't all from the same places.
Yeah. Well, I being a person who was looking at this from a pretty big distance, was what I kind of saw was when Kislev kind of started making more of an impact on the tabletop, they were kind of looking at what their options were for like what they could make as units so it'd be outstanding, and they focused on horse archers. And they basically broke their army up into two portions, which was, to put it very bluntly, was the Ungol portion, which was the, as we talked about, the people that lived out in the rural areas, and then you had the Gospodar version. So you're the only tabletop units they had. So you had Boris Urus, who was Tsar Boris before he died, then his daughter Katerin, who took over. Then you had Boyars, Gruzina, the Griffin Legion, which are very elite cavalry, Kossars, which were your basic infantry, Streltsy, which were a elite unit that used bardiches, which are these big like two-handed halberds, and they would position them and they had a little groove in the halberd blade where they would hold their guns and then fire the guns. Ungol horse archers, winged lancers, and trained bears. That's it. That was Kislev. Yep. And just kind of giving people the tell that some of those are just like real terms. Boyars is just an aristocrat. That's just aristocracy. It's like knighthood. Streltsy means soldiers in Russian, and that particular type of thing that you were describing, right, where it's a pole arm that you can use for as a brace for a firearm. That is a weapon that was used historically. That is historically inspired. And where I was kind of going with this is that as this emphasis on horse archers means kind of a little bit more of thinking a little bit about Tatars and Uzbeks and other Central Asian people, and eventually Mongolians. And so this is where I thought this was kind of interesting, right? From what you were describing to me, the conflict that you're describing, because you described what this lore that kind of already exists and what you're describing right here, where there's a lot of different ethnic groups that overlap and have mutual claims on similar territory and are conflicting over who gets to be in charge. And they have slightly different practices, but there are ways in which they can figure out how to cooperate and collaborate against external threats and create a kind of unified, if complex, patchwork army out of their different styles of fighting. Does that feel like a fair way to kind of describe what's happening?
Yeah, I'd say that's very fair. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you described a change that they were talking about making.
Right. So I'll put this very simply because it actually is relatively simple. So we build up to put it very bluntly, Total War Warhammer 3.
Yes.
And Total War Warhammer 3 is coming out, and for it, the Creative Assembly base is like, hey, we want to use Kislev. We think they'd be a really great addition. Can we use Kislev? And Games Workshop goes, oh yeah, sure, great. Well, in fact, we'll even work with you to update Kislev's army because they only got that small little thing for 6th edition, but we need to have like a big fleshed out army if we're going to make it for Total War. So let's work with you and let's make a 7th edition full book and an 8th edition full book to basically come up with what Kislev should have been. So they do that. But then a problem arises, which is that we get the invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah.
And in this, Kislev has this really strong identity over a culture that has a lot of inner conflict about a people that still has the cultural memory of being conquered by a conqueror, even though they're kind of forced to work together and put aside their begrudging differences from time to time to deal with far worse external threats, in this case, chaos. And GW looked at that, and instead of being able to say, well, this is a fantastical setting, it is a fantasy universe, and while there's inspirations here, these aren't one-to-one, instead they got spooked. And basically went in and tried to erase everything. And what they put out an article, because there was a lot of humbugging about it, of that they weren't called Ungol horse archers anymore. They were just called horse archers. And there was no more, they got rid of a lot of the, Games Workshop was like, there's no longer an understood difference between the Gospodarians and the Ungols, because they've been together now for over 1,000 years, and they're all friends now, and they're all singing Kumbaya by the campfire, and that's it. We don't want to talk about it anymore. Even though in Total War Warhammer, you can actually still see the developer stuff referencing all of the Ungol and Gospodar stuff that still made it into the game. And if you actually play the prologue, the main thrust of the prologue story is about an Ungol prince and a lot of the what we would understand as racism being foisted against him because of the fact that he's an Ungol who has been elevated to princedom, which is considered a big no-no. He's not of Gospodarian blood. He's of Ungol blood. And it's like a huge part of his storyline. But GW basically tried to erase this because they felt it was essentially politically insensitive.
Yes, and so my read of this like trying to flatten out the ethnic groups and trying to remove this historical conflict angle to it, not real history, but internal to Warhammer history, where there are different groups that come from slightly different regions and then they kind of overlap in complicated fashions. And then replacing that with, oh, these people have just been united for forever. They tried to make it depolitical by just fully endorsing the Russian case for the invasion of Ukraine, which is that Ukrainian is a false ethnicity and they're just temporarily embarrassed Russians.
Yeah, and
which is really stepping in it, as far as I am concerned. A fascinating degree of own goal on that part.
Yeah, instead of, which they've done this multiple times, of that instead of taking what is the best route of saying, well, let's examine this in an interesting, complex lens and not give an answer. We're not going to give answers because that's not our job, but we can examine this as a complex story. Instead, they stuff their foot in their mouth and they give an answer. Yeah. And the answer is that, oh, well, the invader was right.
Yeah. The invader was right. This is definitely the way to not take an unpopular position in this stance, in that way. Yeah, you saw how enticing that rake was. Exactly.
Look, it's just perfectly sized for my foot.
Yeah, it's just perfectly sized for my foot. I mean, it's total oaf hours on their part. And it's interesting because part of the reason why I found this so fascinating was that this was an explicit attempt to try to be less political. That wound up being even more political than if they had said nothing. Right? Like, they could have said nothing and it would have been more apolitical. But instead they went with a turbo political answer that they hadn't parsed out the implications of, which I am assuming I'm assuming that this was not some sort of like pro-Russian political activist inside GW. I'm assuming that this came from a place of ignorance, that they just knew that there was something happening in Russia and Ukraine, and they didn't examine what the stated war aims or propaganda around that war were. And then and so they just went, we're just shutting everything down. We are going to remove all of the texture from this. All of the texture, anything that somebody could grasp onto is just going to be gone. And hopefully that will make it like a clean slate and nobody will be able to parse that, like, this is in fact a Russia analogy.
Yeah, and what you could see is there's two things where you could see exactly what happened, which is that someone from higher up came down and said, scrub it all out. I don't want this in there.
Yeah.
And the writers went, well, crap, okay. And the reason is that Kislev was originally planned to be the first army released for Warhammer the Old World. Because when they were announcing Warhammer the Old World, they started with Kislev. And they were showing off, like, here's the concept art, here's the stuff we're doing, like, here's going to be the first army, we're really excited. And then, like we said, the whole thing's going on with the war, and suddenly, Kislev's gone. And they removed it from the starting lineup and completely changed everything. And now we're probably getting Kislev either late this year or early next year. But that means they backed it up by like 2 years or 3 years. And it's because they were like, we don't want to touch it. We just don't want to touch it.
We don't want to. I understand it as an impulse, right? I come from writing, and there are definitely topics where, like, I just avoid making public statements on them because they're too goddamn challenging. However, they were kind of already committed to this because of the fact that Kislev has been in the setting for so long, and me being the historian coward here, being a little bit of a cheeky little bastard here, they could have stuck to their guns and it wouldn't have actually been all that bad, right?
Yeah, well,
like
they Streisand affected themselves.
They did. That's
because exactly. Everyone suddenly went, wait, why is Kislev different now? Why are you changing things? And it draws attention to it.
It draws attention to it, and as mentioned, like the thing that they wound up doing just by the sheer accretion of like writing stories about it and letting different people kind of play around with it, was they wound up with something I think is actually pretty credible and interesting, which is you have this kind of complex shatter zone of overlapping groups that have beef with each other, which is a thing that happens a lot and is a very standard and striking thing about the steppe areas of the world, about that whole Central Asian to Eastern European steppe. And so like that gives you a really strong defense for these things. That gives you a very strong defense to be like, oh, this is like grounded in this actual real world history. And is it messy? Yes. And we don't have an answer. We don't have an actual answer. This isn't like Dark Elves versus High Elves, where like we do have an answer for who's the good guys here.
My writer friend Andy Law, who's written a lot of Warhammer, would immediately raise his hand and be like, that's not actually true.
Hell yeah, I love that. I love that. I have 10 seconds out from ads, and I'm actually going to use the bathroom. So I'm going to run my commercials, and I'll throw up the fan art on my end. I will be back as soon as I'm done with the bathroom and get some water. But
cool, I'm just gonna yap at chat while you're doing that.
Yeah, you get to do that. I'll be right back.
So Nurgle has some slight. He causes some issues around here to scheduling.
Hello. I'm back.
Welcome back. I hope you had an excellent piece, sir.
A productive empty and refill. But yes. Okay. So the way that I come from, again, I'm a relative ignoramus in the case of a relative ignoramus in the case of Warhammer lore. So the way that Warhammer lore looks to me as a relative ignoramus is that the conflict between Dark Elves and High Elves is... The High Elves don't come across covered exactly in glory. They don't exactly come out of this looking like good guys, but they are going up against the Dark Elves, who are insane, torturing slavers that are so evil and goddamn crazy.
Right. So what's interesting is that Games Workshop goes through like waves, right? Where like there's like a peak and then a valley and a peak and a valley, where sometimes they like to do what I would consider peak Warhammer, where they allow the world to be as complex and fascinating as our own in a lot of ways. And allow, there's no true good guys and there's no true bad guys. It's complicated. Well, there are some true bad guys, but a lot of things are complicated. And then sometimes they hit valleys, which is kind of what Old World's been doing a little bit, where they'll be like, oh, the High Elves are the good guys, even though when you really look at them, they're kind of not. So like one of the things that's really interesting, one of the things when it comes to like High Elves versus Dark Elves, is there's the idea that the High Elves are very much a culture that has become so afraid of like some of the darker aspects of themselves that instead of trying to find healthy ways of indulging, they basically try to suppress it as much as possible. That they are a culture that when the initial Civil War broke out, a lot of it had to do with that the High Elves had basically kind of taken over the world in a lot of ways and were this very successful naval empire and were spreading all over the world. And many of them back in the homeland kind of got so bored and were so wealthy and life was so luxurious that they started turning to darker and darker passions in order to make life interesting. Because elves live for a super duper long time and they are prone to annoy if they don't keep themselves busy. And it was the issues with the High Elves themselves that led to the rise of the pleasure cults, which caused a lot of bad things at home and led up to potential civil wars and things. But the High Elves, for all that they masquerade themselves as a very good guy group, they are very manipulative. They like to get involved in other nations like politics and stuff and try and guide them to do the things they want them to do. Most notably was that when it was the High Elves that taught the Empire how to use magic through the colleges of magic. But they purposefully lied to humanity about a lot of aspects of how magic works and a lot of the truths about magic to try and influence humanity to be more controllable. Instead of like actually sharing with them truths. High Elves use slavery. They don't like to call it slavery, but they do use it. They are also very, very nasty out on the ocean. They control all of the ocean routes. And if they see you not on a prescribed route that you are allowed to take, they will kill you. Or at the very least, they will take your ship and arrest you, and you'll become an indentured servant, quote unquote, over in Lothern, if not just arrested and sent elsewhere. But they're a very domineering, controlling force that sees the majority of them see humanity as a very annoying but ultimately useful tool. To be wielded against threats they don't want to deal with, like chaos.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing about the High Elves that plays them off as good, quote unquote, is that the High Elves believe that there's a very distinct breakdown between the good gods that do things that should be welcomed and suppressing any and all passions and trying to be as like enlightened and above the world as possible, which leads to them coming off as very haughty, arrogant, not fun to deal with because they don't allow themselves to be grounded, because they see that as like a bad thing or a threat. And the dark elves, on the other hand, which are admittedly very bad, like they just are. The dark elves
it's just
are
very hard to avoid. Like there are ways that you could characterize. Yeah, it's just hard to make the dark elves look like anything other than. I mean.
Yeah, but
what they look horrible.
What makes the dark elves very interesting from their perspective is that the dark elves, from a looking at Warhammer objectively view, are not truly evil because they're extremely anti-chaos, and chaos is the big bad, right? Chaos is the existential threat to reality that's constantly trying to invade the world and destroy everything. And the dark elves are actually much, much, much more capable than most of the races in the world at dealing with chaos, because they don't view it as this taboo subject that should be avoided or suppressed, or like that, oh, we can't use certain powers because they're kind of bad. The dark elves say, no, we're better than that. We're better than this. We can break these kinds of things to our will. We can dominate these kinds of things. And we're elves. Like, we are the superior race. And they're annoying, but they're also not entirely wrong in certain points of view. And the dark elves are very much, they kind of have a brutal form of practicality. To them, they just don't care about people if they're not elves. Like, if you're not an elf, they just don't care about you. Like, you don't live long enough. You're not of them. You're a lesser species. So why should they care about treating you fairly when they have bigger fish to fry?
Okay, this is like a very like small technical question, but so the dark elves, they look at a human, they're like, this is a bug, right? This thing doesn't live long enough for me to treat it like it's a person. But I don't think that they are the longest lived species in Warhammer Fantasy lore, right?
So elves are functionally immortal a lot of the time. They can die of old age, but it's pretty rare. Most elves, they at least live for many thousands of years. But many of them, if they die of old age, it's almost always because they have essentially they've accomplished some kind of purpose, and they basically just kind of go, all right, I'm done. And they fall asleep and never wake up, and they're functionally dead. But some of them will fall asleep like that, and then they wake up like 600 years later, and their family's like, "Oh my God, we thought you were dead. We had you entombed." And they're like, "No, I was just sleeping."
I was just vibe. I was asking like where like I think Slann live longer.
Yeah, so the Slann are truly immortal. A Slann cannot die unless an outside force kills it. Period. Elves, there are quite a few elves that have basically been alive the entire setting. Like Morathi and Malekith are good examples of. Morathi has been alive since before chaos was even a concept. The dark elves I'll put it this way, actually. Of the three elven races, the dark elves have the most have the most individuals who are in the ballpark of 10,000 years old and have been alive since basically the beginning of recorded elven history. The high elves and the wood elves do not have that luxury.
Which okay. I know nothing about the wood elf lore. I was just mostly wondering like, what is the dark elf position on Slann?
The dark elves see them as basically like the fallen technicians of an elder race that has completely died out, being the old ones. So the old ones completely vanished and died out, and the dark elves see the Slann as the extremely powerful servants of those masters. But since those masters completely failed and died because they goofed up, they're not worthy of being equal because they're just failed projects that don't realize that they're irrelevant and the world has moved on without them.
Ah, interesting.
Which
Huh.
is not an unfair description of the Slann, because the Slann have a very slow, they're very slow to get caught up with things as they're happening.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured was that they were kind of just like a little bit like over the horizon from them. It would have been funny if they had been like, okay, the only other people on this there's elves and pets, and then also these frog people. These are also people that we can have like a real relationship with.
Oh yeah, no, the Dark Elves. Yeah, the only time they've interacted with the Slann really is that they took advantage of the fact that the Slann didn't realize that there are different groups of elves, because the Slann, like I said, they're always kind of behind on the uptake. So the Slann, the Dark Elves are invading Luster, and the Slann are like, why are the elves being weird and dressed in all black now? What's happening? And the elves basically just like looted and raided a bunch of like old one tech and Slann magic artifacts and left with it. And the Slann were like, oh, I guess they're bad now. I guess we have to do something about them. But they've actually captured and sacrificed a couple Slann, because to them it's just a way to get more power. The Slann are just a stepping stone.
All right. Huh. All right. Okay, yeah, that was just like an aside, a small little thing. I don't have a particularly I don't have a particularly exciting thing to say insight into that one. Okay. Yeah, so this is I mean, I know the 40K side a little bit more, as many people do, unfortunately. And one of those things that I always like to point out if people bring up like the lack of politics in this kind of world is that the fundamental start point of 40K is a bunch of British guys did a lot of coke, hated Margaret Thatcher, and loved Judge Dredd. Like Judge Dredd's a huge influence on it. And that reminded me that I was thinking about that in the case of like you were talking about like the peak Warhammer thing, because this is a thing that I see in the Judge Dredd series and a couple of other like long running series, is that you kind of have these generations of authors and authors who come in with different what do we call them? Motives and perspectives. And so in the case of Judge Dredd, there's a very obvious one where there are people who the start point for Judge Dredd is as a satire about Dirty Harry and about American policing and like police brutality. It is, Judge Dredd is a stupid policeman. And he's violent and he's stupid, and the whole world that he is upholding is intrinsically stupid and violent and evil and pointless, and yada yada yada. And then you get writers later on who look at this world and like, yes, Judge Dredd himself is this stupid, easily manipulated comedy of a character, and then, but what if he's actually the good guy? What if like he's actually the hard man doing the hard things during the hard times? And this is the kind of leader we really need. We actually do just flat out need this like this guy who like is willing to just like kill innocent civilians if it captures bad guys. And that does kind of strike me as a thing that will happen in 40K and in Warhammer Fantasy, where somebody looks at these societies that are complicated and nuanced and structured and go, no, we need to turn this into a flat morality play.
Yeah, well, there's that eternal issue with like one of the biggest criticisms of the level at 40K is that you had this original idea which very much showcased, like you said, was very much that the Imperium sucks. Like they're idiots, they're complete dumbasses, and they do more damage to themselves than anybody else.
Yep.
And the main storyline of the threading is literally a civil war caused by a group of individuals being so stubborn and stupid that they bring an entire spacefaring empire to its knees. Like they're goofy. They're inherent. They're so goofy.
But they're so goofy. Yeah.
But what they did is that you had more and more authors that were like, well, I want to tell a story where they're heroic. I want to tell a story about like how like the Space Marines are the only thing holding up the Imperium. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but like, they're still doing horrible things. And it's like, okay, yeah, cool. But then as 40K continues to develop, they make the universe simpler, or the galaxy simpler and simpler and simpler, to the point where it becomes that the whole galaxy sucks. Everyone is bad, but all of the other Xenos are so over the top, hilariously evil that it leads to this sinister undertone that I don't think was originally intended, but ended up becoming part of the setting. That no, the Imperium has to be super evil and fascist because it's the only way they can survive.
Which I think is asinine. I think is asinine. I think it's. I disagree with that one, but like bluntly, because I have my own particular.
I agree.
Yeah,
I know so many people, or I've met so many people that's how they see the setting.
Yeah, that's how they see the setting.
Oh, yeah, the Imperium's bad, but, and it's like, no, there's no but. There's no but.
There's no but. There's no but. The Imperium is bad because that's how the writers made it, because they wanted to make a fiction that was about a world even worse than our own one, as a way of making a point, because this is how science fiction is usually written, to make a point about the present moment. Right, they were making fun of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. They were like, this is the world that Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan think is good, is the Warhammer 40k one. And that's a lot of that motive there. And I put it in the text there, but my hot take that like the Imperium causes chaos in a very critical way. That this is causal. And so the alternate universe version of 40k, where it's a commune of man or the liberal democracy of man, they just crush chaos, right? Because understated thing from history that video games will lie to you about: fascists are really bad at warfare. They really fucking suck at it. They're really fucking bad at it. No other ideology has a 100% rate of choosing to wage war against foreigners and then doing so badly that their state ceases to exist. Also, I need to say hello to my raiders. Hello, raiders. Hello, Katsun. Let me give this shout out to Katsun. Kara is a dear friend of mine. I know you were playing Peak. Katsun. Why is my tongue lazy today? Katsun. I can't actually. I'm doing a bad job on rolling the T.
I just can't roll letters, and it makes me sad.
Katsun. There, I can roll the R. I don't know why I was trying to roll the T. But yes, Karatsun. How was Peak? And hello to Cookie Mini, and obviously hello to Mix, and hello to Skellingtons, and hello to all the others. For the Raiders and everybody else here, I am Almantas, former professor of sociology and current VTuber. I am joined today by Sotek, Loremaster, and we are talking about Warhammer fantasy lore. We've made a divergence in talking about 40k lore because I was going to drag this back to making a point about fantasy lore, but I do like to take my big divergences because I am now that I'm no longer an actual academic, I have been liberated from needing to get everything done in 40-minute chunks. So
is it really a nerd chat if you don't have way too many tangents in the midst of
way too many tangents? I love the tangents. I love the tangents. Yeah, I know Kara can roll her R's.
Stop rubbing my face in it.
I am not doing nearly so bad. My friend Alex Azarashi can't roll her R's, and I found that while she was streaming. And so when she came on for a drunk stream, I just rolled the R in Azarashi for 30 seconds and did it a million times.
So evil. That's so evil.
I was like, hello, Alex. Azarashi. I've got pretty good lung capacity. That's more lung capacity than anything else at that point. But yes. Yeah, Cookie Mini. I was a Skaven player. And we haven't gotten to talk about Skaven at all.
Oh, don't. We're about to.
We're about to get into. Yes. So what we were kind of talking about more was a tendency that happens in this kind of long form dystopian. I should say serial dystopia might actually be the most important part. If you've got a serial dystopia, you're going to eventually get authors who come in and are like, what if the dystopia is actually based? What if the dystopia is actually based?
What if the Space Marines really unironically were just the best? What if they're just the best boys?
What if they're just the best boys? What if the boys are just the best boys?
And not totally brainwashed child soldier super mutant monsters.
Yeah. What if? And again, this is one of those things where you just have to push people on it very mildly and be like, are you really willing to go to the mat and say that child soldiers is a cool thing to do? And some people are. I'm going to be honest with you. Some people are. Some people just
Nope.
some people just take it. Some people just roll with it, and it's and so yes. So I was a Skaven player, and Skaven are a kind of interesting one, because of they were the interesting thing to me as when from my recollection of it was that there was a fanon canon complexity. There's a real fanon canon divide here. I figure somebody here might be confused by what I mean by a fanon canon divide. Fanon canon divide is when there's a meme in the community that contradicts the lore as written.
Go on.
So in the case of Skaven, there was a bunch of memes about the Skaven all being complete cowards. That Skaven are just afraid of everything and easily and will run away from everything and are not willing to stand and fight. And this contradicts the lore where Skaven are pretty regularly getting into duels to the death with each other.
So, okay, that's actually a really interesting one. So they're both right.
Mm-hmm.
So Skaven, it is correct. Skaven are intrinsic cowards. They prefer to run away or to only fight when they have the advantage.
Yeah.
But they also come from a culture where appearance is everything. So whenever you have like two Skaven chieftains or whatever, you have the situation where there's a duel type scenario happening. Often what you'll have is a Skaven realizing that if he doesn't do this duel, his lessers are going to kill him because he's going to appear weak in front of them. So he basically has to put on this bravado act, even though he's absolutely terrified, and has to fight this other guy to the death who he doesn't want to fight because that guy's vaguely equal to him, because they're so paranoid. But you do have some Skaven, like Quick Head Taker, for instance, who are so high on their own supply that they're abnormal. But he's a very unusual case compared to most of his kind.
And I will say that to me, this is like I look at this and I see a lot of humanity in this Skaven. A book that I never shut up about is Soldiers and Ghosts by J.E. Lendon, and it's a military history about ancient Rome and ancient Greece, but it's actually an intellectual history. It looks like a military history, but it's actually an intellectual history about what did Romans and Greeks think made a good soldier. And critical to this entire hypothesis, and this is the thing that, like, when you start noticing it about historical things, it's hard to avoid. Men in particular, young men, are more afraid of embarrassing themselves than they are of dying. And it's not uniform. It's not universal, but it's so common that it is a load-bearing feature of basically every military in all of history, is that you can shame and embarrass a teenage boy into getting himself killed. And that's kind of what I see with some of the stuff happening with Skaven. Is that
so the Skaven, one of the things I really love about them, to kind of tie into our 40K conversation earlier, is that I think Warhammer Fantasy avoids some of the dangerous pitfalls of 40K because the ultimate super fascist in our setting are the Skaven. The Skaven are the fascists.
Yeah.
And they're fucking hilarious because the setting makes fun of them for it constantly. Yeah. Like, you know, nobody takes them seriously unless it's in more of a horror setting. Because they are terrifying from an objective standpoint, but because we're often seeing them from their own, Skaven are written very interestingly, in my opinion, because unlike a lot of species in the Warhammer settings, we almost always get to see Skaven from their own internal monologues, as opposed to from like a human perspective. It's actually quite rare that you see them from like a human's point of view. It's usually you're seeing it from the Skaven's point of view because it's more funny. Of that, the Skaven are so paranoid and they have such a fast way of thinking, and the whole thing is, despite the fact of how powerful they really are as a species, they are hysterically incompetent because just like any totalitarian group, it's so full of paranoia and backstabbing and them constantly hamstringing one another that despite the fact that they could theoretically be powerful and could theoretically be a great threat, they never are, because their greatest enemy are themselves.
We did get a raid while you were saying that, but I didn't want to interrupt you because you're on a roll, and I agree with you, and I will elaborate on that because I'm kind of enjoying like hearing I'm enjoying hearing the lore and then talking a little bit about some of the historical bases. And again, not to make it an analogy, but to make it kind of like a looking at this through like adding some weight to it. But yes, Inari, thank you for the raid. Thank you for the raid. What were you up to, Inari? What were you up to, Inari?
She was doing her Offkai Part 2 stream.
Oh, Offkai Part 2. Okay. Oh, I should have I didn't catch that. I need to go back and watch that one because I know that you were making fun of me during that one. Inari is a dear friend. And for all of the raiders who might not know me, I am Almantas. I am a retired professor of sociology, now VTuber. Strons, thank you for the follow. And today I am joined by Sotek, the lore master of Warhammer Fantasy Battles fame. And we are discussing some of the ways in which there are real political implications to fictional choices made in Warhammer Fantasy Battles.
Yes, and there's actually a topic I'm really excited to get to in a bit, but we're doing Skaven right now. And
we're doing Skaven right now. And let me say hello to Inari and Ethan. Ethan is wonderful. People should know Ethan. Ethan rocks. And Hug a Tree Be a Target. Ooh, good to see Hug a Tree Be a Target. And thank you for the follow, Yuzu Yoko. And yes, so well, this is a thing that I think about with Skaven, right? And what you're saying. So one of those things that is an interesting piece of how fascist propaganda contradicts enormously the observed reality of fascist governance is that fascist governments are extremely paranoid and extremely prone to vicious infighting to an extent that liberal governments almost never are. And this has a lot to do with the fact that the way that you get ahead and the way that you survive in a fascist regime is by stabbing everyone around you in the back. And Hannah Arendt has an actually really interesting point about fascist governance that I've been thinking about the last week or so that really cements like part of the issue with like trying to run the type of government. I think it applies a lot to the Skaven, which is that incompetence itself becomes a selling point for promotion inside the regime. If you are more incompetent, that means that if you are incompetent and you get promoted, that means you are even more deeply loyal to the people above you, which means that ambitious, competent people are faced with a really dire choice about how they're going to advance in society, and they're not going to advance in society by being loyal and good boys. They're going to advance in society by being vicious little backstabbing monsters. The only people who get ahead by being good little loyal boys are the most incompetent and stupid people.
That is 100% accurate to Skaven.
Yeah, I know, right? I know.
Like if you're like the whole thing with Skaven is if they realize that someone is just as smart as them or is like good at something, they will purposely make sure that guy's like in the first wave to attack the enemy or whatever to get them killed because like, oh no, that guy could replace me.
Yeah, loyalty versus meritocracy. There's always trade-offs with loyalty versus meritocracy, and depending on the type of government you have, like feudal type governments, vassalage type governments, there's going to be an increasing emphasis on loyalty because of the fact that you don't have offices where you can remove people from. So a person's political power is just like, it's just a bucket. They just have a bucket of political power. They don't have a domain-limited form of political power. And so that means that if somebody gets promoted ahead, they just become threatening to everyone else in the society, who it creates a security dilemma. And so loyalty and honorable behavior become more and more important as a society has less and less like bureaucracy and strict offices. And kind of the whole thing that makes a vassalage feudal society is that you just have that bucket. You just have a bucket of power, and people just have bigger and smaller buckets, and that's it. And so that means that's part of why loyalty has become so much more important if you read medieval romantic poems and stuff like that. That's why they're so they emphasize it so goddamn much. And yeah, the case of the Skaven, like Skaven creates this insane society where meritocracy and intelligence are extremely important as stated values, but as observed values, they are really undermined all the time.
Yeah, what's interesting for them is that one of the most valuable skills isn't being good at like an actual skill, it's being good at knowing how to blame something on somebody else.
And Ask me about holding down a white collar job. But yeah, yeah, buck passing is an incredibly important skill, and it is something that's kind of interesting that what I see about this. To me, the Skaven look very human as a society.
I very much agree. They have some really strong. Actually, so a fun thing there. Actually, Sean DeWolf, thank you very much for the bits. Yes, if the Skaven stopped fighting each other long enough and unified against the world, they would be really threatening. But the whole joke there is that the Skaven never unify against anything unless it's an external threat actually attacking them, which nobody does because they know not to do that. Because the Skaven are too busy tearing themselves apart as long as nobody causes them to be genuinely threatened.
Yeah, and it's this is again why this is. And what I guess kind of what I see in the Skaven is like a distinction between them and hold on and like how humans normally behave is that the Skaven feel to me like 10, 20, 50% more impulsive than humans normally are.
Yeah, well, and it's like I mean, Skaven are super hyperactive, right? So they have a super high metabolism that burns their bodies out so fast that old age for a Skaven, like a Skaven's gonna die of old age, is 10 years old.
Yeah, because they're rats. Rats die very young. It's very sad for me, a person who thinks rats are very
sad
cute.
IRL fact because they're so adorable. Yeah.
They're so adorable. They're so nice. They're so intelligent. They're amazing pets. If it wasn't for the fact that me and Fangs are having a little aside about how Hitler governed. And it's kind of a microcosm of this. And yeah, it's kind of interesting that this is kind of how they've chosen to portray the Skaven. And I think you're correct in pointing this out as this being a more intelligent execution of what they were doing with the Imperium of Man.
I'm curious what you might find funny is the creation of the Skaven, like how they came about.
I'm not familiar. Let's.
So it's actually a combination of IRL myths that makes for a fun story. So basically, what it is that there was this city in what we would vaguely consider like northern Italy. So a place called Talea, but before it was Talea, and there was this grand, awesome city known as Kazvar that was ruled over by this really badass, uber intelligent god among men named Tylos. And Tylos, his people were favored by the gods. In particular, they were favored by the goddess Myrmidia, who was the goddess of civilization. And Myrmidia basically gave them many of the secrets to civilization. And some of the other gods favored them and stuff. And they basically built up this great ultimate city, the city of Kazvar, up on this big hill. And down where the hill met the mountains, which are now known as the Vaults, there was a hold of dwarfs. And because they were masters of civilization and had the favor of Myrmidia, they were very good at diplomacy. So they chat with the dwarfs, and then the dwarfs traded and had a very good relationship, and they built this uber city. But Tylos wasn't satisfied with his level of being acknowledged as one of the greatest cities ever. So he says, in order to show the gods our joy at their favoring us, we're going to build a tower. We're going to build a tower so high that it reaches the heavens. So it's the Tower of Babel. And so they start building the Tower of Babel, but they run into a problem, which is that as they keep building it up and up and up, originally it started with noble intentions, but as it continued to grow, Tylos became more and more frustrated that they weren't able to, they were running into problems due to like physics and magic and other things about finishing it. And rather than trying to find a humane way to deal with it, he started abusing much of the knowledge he had from Myrmidia, enslaving the people around him to become forced work on the tower, using exploits and cheats by abusing the prayers of the gods, abusing magic, abusing his relationship with the dwarfs, to make this tower taller and taller and taller, more grand, because he wanted to prove that he was greater than everyone. Including the gods.
Classic hubris.
Yeah. So Myrmidia, ashamed by what had become of those favored by her, and realizing that in coddling them, she had allowed them to devolve into such a bad state, abandons them. And when she abandons them, the tower is almost complete, but they can't finish it. It's just beyond their means. And so a mysterious stranger arrives. And this mysterious stranger comes to King Tylos and he says, I will finish this tower for you in one night. And all I ask in exchange is that you allow me to put a offering and a symbol of my own god at the very top of the tower. That's all I ask. You don't have to pay me. You don't have to do anything else. And Tylos, in his greed and hubris, instead of seeing this for the very obvious Faustian deal that it is, just says, yeah, sure, great, okay, awesome. And the night passes, and in the morning, sure enough, the tower is finished, and on the top is a great horned bell with a strange symbol on it. And the bell begins to toll, and it tolls for 13 days and 13 nights, driving everyone insane as it brings in clouds that rain and never stop raining, flooding parts of Tylos, turning into a horrible marsh, and rats begin to arrive, and the rats begin to get bigger and start eating people, and they eat the children first, and then they start chasing the adults as they get braver and hungrier, and the people... their relationship with the dwarves had fallen out towards the end of building the tower because they had gotten so arrogant and greedy and demanded more of the dwarves, and dwarves were like, no, we've had enough of you, and they sealed the hold. The people bust into the dwarf hold because they need supplies and help, and they find all the dwarves have been eaten alive and there's nothing left but bones, and in the dark they're surrounded by rats that have started to walk as if they were men before they all flood in, and the people of Kazvara are never heard from or seen again. And that entire area that used to be one of the greatest cities of all humanity becomes known as Skaven Blight, which is the horrible sunken behind the zombie marshes, as they're known, is the horrible great sunken city of the Skaven, where the great bell of the bell tower of the horned rat still remains and is the center of his power.
So enough about living in Brooklyn in the summer of 2021. But I'm just when you said the bells ringing for 13 days and 13 nights, I was like, I remember when they canceled 4th of July celebrations, and then everybody was just buying cheap fireworks and just setting them off randomly at 24/7 for like a month straight.
Oh, that must have sucked.
I'm a Brooklynite. It was very unfun when that happened. It was very unfun.
And people suck sometimes.
yeah. It was an aside. There was a very annoying series of conspiracy theories that it was like the cops were trying to drive people insane. It's like, no, just fireworks were really cheap. That's what it was. Yep. It was just fireworks were really cheap. But yeah, the that is pretty cool. That is a pretty cool series of like magical catastrophes to like layer on top of each other. It's a lot of things to layer on top of each other and to happen all at once. And again, I like the Skaven, right? I think the Skaven are cool. And not just because I kind of like the sort of like high-tech fighting style, and also I'm an aficionado for light infantry in settings. I love it. I love the light infantry style in my tabletop games. Huge.
Skaven do love their chaff.
They do love their chaff. I play Hawk Islam in Infinity. I think like the one big exception is in Conquest. I like the Rome. I like the Rome guys. Something
about who plays them. He loves them over in Albuquerque.
There's just something about undead ancient Romans. It's just right. It's just correct. It's just correct. It's just the right way to do things. Yeah. Well, and I like the high movement profiles. Conquest does have dinosaurs. Bangs out. There is a dinosaur faction.
Oh my gosh.
The War Drune. The War Drune.
Yes,
Orcs who ride dinosaurs.
Yes, I play War Drune when I do play Conquest, which isn't super often, but I do.
Which isn't super often, and that's a rough one to not play super often because they keep on changing the rules for War Drune like extremely radically. So like you come back and you're just like playing a different game every 3 months.
Yeah, but on Tabletop Sim they are pretty goated. I love War Drune.
Hold on, we're gonna have to look up. I'm gonna have to grab a link for because Fangs Out is apparently confused. Like did not.
Yeah, they're and the nice thing is the rules are free, which is super good.
Hold up, what? These guys. The Wajrun. Yeah, orcs who ride dinosaurs. It's... I don't know how they play right now, because I haven't checked the Wajrun rules in a while. I remember when I read the Wajrun rules a while ago, I was like, this is too complicated for me. This is too, like...
They do be having steps.
They do be having steps. They are not a set and forget army. They are not a set and forget army. They are a tempo army. They are a very complicated tempo army.
Unless there's anything Skaven you wanted to particularly talk about, there's actually a thing I wanted to pick your brain about.
Yes. Let's hear it. What you got?
So, one of the things that I find interesting in the history of Warhammer, which talks into our whole real world affecting Warhammer yada yada stuff, is we have a group in Warhammer known as Araby. Which Araby is
I was parsing that wrong in my head. Yeah, the Arab based one. Okay.
Yeah. So they're the Arabians, but it's Araby instead of Arabi or whatever it probably should be.
I was definitely spelling it in my head as like error B, like.
Oh yeah. Just like Arabians, but you put a Y instead of a I.
Yeah.
So Araby, it used to be a fairly major faction in Warhammer. We had a side game that was created in the 2000s, the aughts, which was known as Warmaster. And Warmaster was basically you were playing Warhammer, but the minis were at a much smaller scale. So instead of playing with like 100 guys in your army for like a 2,000 point game, you'd have like 5,000 guys in your army for a 2,000 point game, but the minis were a lot smaller.
Yeah. I did play a little. I tried to get people into Warmaster and nobody was biting. I actually really like the specials games more than I like the base games. But yeah, keep going.
So great, you know what it is. Awesome. Yeah. That makes that easier. So Araby was one of the factions that was released for it, and it was Araby's first time being a playable tabletop faction. It was reasonably popular. It had some really cool stuff. So you had like your unit of monstrous cavalry. So you had like dudes riding on elephants, and you had like guys that were riding camels, and they had these big guns that like they'd put part of the gun held up by the camel's humps so they could like have these giant barreled guns, the Jezzails. And you had like, your whirling dervishes and your genies, and you had guys that rode on like flying carpets and threw jars of like scorpions and snakes down on people, and just fun goofy stuff.
Yeah.
But then all of the shit starts to go down in the Middle East.
Yes. Then 9/11 happened.
Yes, and
folks, because I know that there are some people here who are younger than 9/11 happening. There was a period in human history before 9/11 happened. It's genuinely kind of hard to describe how different the world was for Americans. Like America truly like lost its mind. Yeah, Kara is one of the people who I know is younger than 9/11.
Bunch of babies.
yeah. But it's for those of us who were like adults before then. It's remarkable how different people thought and talked about Arab people.
Yeah, and so Araby went from being a playable faction to a very we don't talk about them. And there were times where it would kind of start to come back a little bit. But then, like, another thing would happen. Like, of course, there was that really horrible but famous tragedy of a French magazine that was attacked for depicting certain concepts. And GW there's been such a strong fan desire for Araby to return to the setting, because Araby they're not Muslim. They take a lot of strong historical leaning from certain aspects of Middle Eastern culture, but they're much more heavily inspired by the myths contained within the 1001 Arabian Nights story, which has a lot of those things. But like, there's no Allah in Warhammer. There used to be way back in the day, but that was before we got more modern Araby back in the early 2000s, which got rid of that because it didn't really fit the Warhammer world. But Araby has always sat in this place that I've always found so frustrating of they're so important and critical to the setting. They really, really are. But so many people believe they shouldn't be touched because they're like, they're based on Middle Eastern stuff, so we can't do that.
and and that's particularly frustrating because I've been talking about some other games that are like that other tabletop players play. Trench Crusade has an Arabic faction, the Sultanate. Parabellum has Conquest has one, the Sorcerer Kings, and what was the other game? Infinity, Haq Islam, literally called Islam. Like, it's literally a Muslim faction. Is in Infinity, and there's ways that you can handle discussing and portraying Arabic cultures and Arabic peoples in a way that isn't intrinsically insensitive or stupid. And that's not like an impossible thing to do. Other games have done it. I can think of games that have done a very bad job. To use an example of the very bad version of this, was when 9/11 happened, the game Command and Conquer Generals was in alpha. And this was back before EA was a thing, right? Before there was early access gaming. So alpha really means like they were showing placeholder assets to investors, right? And that means, so they like, it's like October 1st and they show Command and Conquer Generals at like pre-alpha builds to some investors, and the investors look at this and like, get this out the door in 6 months and make it more racist.
I remember I was young when 9/11 happened. I was like not 8 or 9. So remember it though, like clear as day. But I remember going to my grandfather around that time. My grandfather lived down in Houston, and my grandfather was an old Army veteran, was very, very pro military, like he never wanted any of us to join the military. He joined, he was like, okay, no one else in my family's ever going to do this. But he was like, we should support them. Blah, blah, blah. And I remember the only video game he ever had on his PC, the only one his entire life, was this Flash game where like it's like Osama bin Laden and the Taliban or whatever just like running around on the screen, and you're playing the Statue of Liberty and you click to make her stomp on people. That's the game.
Yikes.
And looking back on it, it's like, oh my god.
that is not how me being, we're coming up on July 4th, and me being a relatively America defender guy as a liberal commie, even I'm like, I don't want to see the Statue of Liberty portrayed in that way. The type of America I want to believe in doesn't
no, it was
that.
terrible. It was terrible. Mix remembers, Oh, Mix, do you really? Oh wow.
Mix would, of course. Mix is a true encyclopedia of online knowledge. Terrifyingly knowledgeable. And to use a non-tabletop gaming example that's like would be a good place for Warhammer to draw some things from would be the video game Rise of Legends had an Arabic faction.
Oh, I love Rise of Legends.
I love Rise of Legends.
Good game.
Rise of Nations is my favorite strategy game of all time, so I have a very soft spot for Rise of Legends, and that's like Rise of Legends in terms of like its aesthetic and like level of fantasy is a little bit more Age of Sigmar-y, but it wouldn't be that hard to take some major inspiration from that. I genuinely don't think that their portrayal of a Arabic Muslim culture is like insensitive. I think it's just cool. I think it's just fucking. I think it's just fucking cool.
I did a big video like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, talking about like how Total War Warhammer should do Araby, and that it could work super duper well and would be fine. Like there's nothing in there that's that spooky. But as we kind of talked about with Kislev, Games Workshop is kind of notoriously cowardly when it comes to these kinds of topics. Because their idea a lot of the time isn't to say, oh, we should treat this with respect and be careful. It's that's scary, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah, that does seem to be what they're doing. Which I'm not going to lie. I don't really get too mad about that. Because I'm a person who like, I think about certain third rail issues. I'm like, I could just do other things with my time. Right. I could just write about something else. because I do like political writing. It's just like if something's a hot enough topic, I'm like, I could just touch something else here.
So I used to be like that until like when I've been doing this for a while. It was probably around year 6. So I'm going into next year. I think is like my 10th year. I think of content creation.
Okay.
I was probably around like year 4, year 5, when I was at an event that I got invited to the UK for Warhammer stuff. So I was at this event as one of the guests. And I'll never forget a conversation I got to have with a guy who came up and was like, "Hey, like, could you like talk to me? Like, I'd really love to like hear more about like what's like the Middle East or like India like in the Warhammer world." And I was like, so there's a couple things I could tell you about it, but like we don't know a lot. Like, because Games Workshop doesn't like to tackle those kinds of places.
Yeah.
And him being like, I remember how crushed he looked of like, I was really excited to see how like cool things and like creatures from our mythology or our history and stuff would be interpreted in this universe. But I guess they're just not wanting to touch it. Like, I guess they just want to do European cultures. And I remember sitting there being like, well, shit. He's got a point.
Yeah. He's got a point. It's like I said, there's a point of that I think about where it's like you have to make a budget for your time and what you're doing, and like it's worth being focused. However, in the case of Warhammer, they've been so unfocused and so all over the goddamn place, and they so consistently do this that like, why not, right? And do you know the video game Dominions?
Ooh, that rings a bell.
Okay. This is not a game that I generally recommend people play because it is incredibly tedious to play. But it is a very janky pixel graphic only strategy game where the start point that the developers had was, what if Jesus and Thor got into a fist fight? Of course, Tohu has 3,000 hours in Dominions. But it does a really interesting series of interpretations, and because it's very minimal pixel graphics that they use, they will add new playable nations to the game willy-nilly. They'll do it very easily, and people will mod in completely insane player mod nations that are like there's one. So I won't get to the player mod nation ones to start out with, but like they do the Undead Ancient Rome thing, and they actually have 3 different interpretations of this, where it's like one is like ancient Rome, but they've just like figured out what necromancy is, and it's a small thing. And then they go into ancient Rome, but they did a necromantic disaster that ate all of their people, and everybody is now undead. And that, I think, is the inspiration for the old Dominion and Conquest, Last Argument of Kings, because Dominions is an old video game series. And I think that the way that they interpreted Hindu nations is really fascinating. They really focused on the monkey kingdoms from the Ramayana. And so the default is they've got like 8 different of these Hindu nations. The default people in these monkey nations are hyper intelligent monkeys. Are hyper intelligent monkeys that like summon like 6-armed gods and stuff to the battlefield. And apes, yes, they're gorillas. And it's a really interesting way of interpreting this, and it is a direction that like could serve as some inspiration for the Warhammer guys. But as you mentioned, one, they're frankly kind of cowards. Right? These guys are frankly kind of cowards. 2, they're not super interested in portraying things outside of Europe at like a basic level. And we're about to go into ads on my end, and I need to use the bathroom again because I drink a liter of water every hour.
Good Lord. All right.
I'm the moist boy.
So you're basically a living hose is what you're telling me.
Kind of, yeah. My streams are actually a calculus problem on predator prey systems. The classic leaky bucket.
Amazing.
But the thing that I am kind of thinking about here is that Warhammer is frequently confronted and embroiled in a problem where they have a non-trivial part of their audience is very, very right-wing.
Yeah, especially 40K. Yeah.
Especially 40K. And so they are constantly kind of walking this tightrope but they also have a very, very not right-wing audience as well. And they're constantly trying to figure out how to not make those two groups mad enough to boycott them. And I think they might look at the possibility of portraying Indian people in a not British colonialist light as a potential form of antagonizing some of their audience.
When you get back, I have some things to say that I think you'll find really interesting.
Excellent. So now Loremaster of Sotek gets to take over. I will run the ads on my end, but please take care of my folks, and I'll be right back.
The genuine ideas that inspired everything. Like, he knows the people that wrote everything.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
The silence makes this funny. Oh no. How was VHS bozos?
How? So someone shoot that man. Shoot
that's Kara. That's Kara, and my mom is 45. Fuck off, Kara. Worst part is that I know I can outrun Kara. Despite that, I'm pretty sure I have both better cardio and I'm pretty sure I got both better cardio and better flexibility than her. So fuck off, Kara.
Yeah, but didn't I hear you on your freaking Offkai stream be like, "Oh, I should have brought my running shoes to Offkai"?
One of the first things I did when I got home from Offkai was I ran 4 miles in like 38 minutes.
Couldn't be me. Couldn't be me.
Yeah. No, I'm Geezer Brigade. I'm keeping up with my cardio.
Bunch of bastards, the lot of you. The lot of you.
I like running. It's It's the only thing that really keeps my anxiety in check. That's the main reason why I wish I'd brought my shoes to off tie.
I enjoy very long walks.
Mhm.
I'm not a runner. I like hiking. I do not like running.
I have to get the heart rate up. Is the thing. Like a hike doesn't get my heart rate up enough. It has to be something that like gets the heart rate. It has to be like burn energy like really hard.
So, it's for me, like if I'm doing something that's making me breathe really hard, that makes my anxiety go up, so I avoid it.
Well, I mean, that's the reason why it works as an anti-anxiety thing, is it trains your body to accept that that's a thing that like just kind of happens sometimes and it can deal with. As opposed to spiraling.
I don't like it.
I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry, but this is how the body works.
I'll just walk long distances and lift weights. I don't want to run. I don't like it.
Car's like 5'2", so I can just bowl over it.
Oh, good. We can lord over their height whenever they bring up a youth. Good.
Yeah. That was Woodstock, yeah. Thanks for that one. I'm not going to pretend I went to Woodstock. Enough people, 1 million people pretend they went to Woodstock. Like 10,000 people went to Woodstock, and 1 million people say they went there. It's very funny. But yes. I
lost whatever train of thought I had.
I lost whatever train of thought we were on entirely. You said you had something that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, but I don't remember what it was.
Oh my goodness!
So I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know what to tell you either. What were we talking about when I got to use the restroom?
So we were talking about Araby stuff.
Araby. Yes, I mean, I guess like you said, like they're cowards. Was kind of my last point. Oh, India and Warhammer. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So one of the big things that's been very, very exciting is that Warhammer Fantasy. So Warhammer Fantasy died. For anyone that doesn't know. To very big TLDR around 2014, I think 2015. Warhammer Fantasy blew up. Basically, to put a very long story short, the people in control of Games Workshop at the time were not the best. And when confronted with a Warhammer Fantasy sales that were starting to slip, and the game was having some struggles due to a long story of things that we don't really have the time to get into without going on a huge diatribe. The CEO and the people at the top elected to just blow up the setting, because instead of trying to like fix it or do other stuff, they were like, well, what if we just blew it up and made a 40K version of Fantasy, which gave us AOS, which has evolved into something much more special and much wonderful. But it started off as absolute garbage.
Yeah, no, they released a bad game. They made it better, but they did release a bad game. There's no.
So and all the people that made those decisions got kicked out of the company because the company nearly went into the absolute red, and 40K started suffering, and everything was bad and on fire, and it was awful. But we got through it. And years later, after the video games proved so popular because they focused on the setting and exploring the depth of the setting with Vermintide 2, and Total War Warhammer 1, 2, and 3, that GW went, oh, there's money in this. There's a lot of money in this. People love this setting, so we should go back to it. But thanks to the Total War games, we didn't just go back to what we already had, but it's expanded. So we have Grand Cathay, which is Warhammer China, which had always existed, but was really far in the periphery and was like this very vague, there is a Chinese-inspired group somewhere way over there. You know, like we had their country noted on some maps, but we weren't, they weren't fleshed out. Now they are. They're heavily fleshed out now, and they're awesome. And it's not just with Grand Cathay. We are also going to places like Warhammer India, which is known as End, because Warhammer is very good at naming conventions. Or we know that eventually we're going to Nippon, which is, you never guessed it, Warhammer Japan.
You never would have guessed it. You never would have guessed it. But I did get rated while you were talking.
Yes, Halbernacht. I love Halbernacht.
I love Halbernacht. Yeah, no, we started off from the perspective of talking about Araby. That's where we started off from, and we're kind of expanding into this grander question. But yes, welcome in Hal and Man Majude. and Tolkai and all the other raiders. My name is Almantas. I am a former professor of sociology, current VTuber. I mostly do calligraphy and paint miniatures, and I am joined today by Loremaster Sotek.
When he says he does calligraphy, that does not do it justice. Watching him do it in person is obscene. Like you watch and you're like, I don't understand what's happening right now. How is he doing that?
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
He did it in person to my face.
Yeah, no, Hal actually saw Hal saw the previous version of it. You saw the more refined version of it, because when I was at MagFest and met Hal there, it occurred to me after I was already there that I could make name tags for people, and so I didn't have like sticky tags. I just had a notebook, and so I was like, and I didn't even have scissors, so I was just like tearing out pieces of a notebook and using tape to tape them onto.
That's so cool, though.
onto people's notebooks. It was very jank. But no, it's very sweet of you to say. I like doing calligraphy a lot, and it's that's what I was doing last night for 4 or 5 hours. I'm not as good of a miniatures painter. I'm an okay miniatures painter, but I'm learning. I am learning and improving. And it is correct to say that I paint so many Romans. Oh my god! Somebody bought me a box of Roman soldiers off of Throne, and it was actually, I thought it was like 20 models when I listed it, but it was actually 100. Oh. It's I've got so many. I've got so many. It's gonna take me so long to get through them. And at the rate I paint, where I paint like one model every 2 weeks, it's not Josie. I don't know what the Korea and calling it Nippon is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. But so is Cathay. Cathay is just another old school word for China.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. And it's but yes. So Hal and Raiders, if you would like to raid and run, that is extremely justified. I know that I tend to raid out. I did catch some of Hal's painting. It was lovely. And Legerman, thank you for the follow. And yeah, we were talking about the other areas that they can expand the map into, and partially the issue with all a little bit downstream of GW's issue with nearly dying as a company in 2014, and the way that they were revived by the Total Warhammer fantasy and their increasing sluttiness with IP.
Yeah, well, and they also figured out, like, oh, people want to buy these things not just in like Europe and America.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is definitely a thing that you think about with a lot of the games end up thinking about in a lot of interesting ways. That like, where do you release new factions? They did get super slay about Tohu Vavohu, though. I emphasize this because I remember the mid 2000s when getting a video game made in Warhammer took like a million years. Like pre Dawn of War, it was like impossible. So many people want to make Warhammer games, and GW was so stingy about it. GW
used to be notoriously well, they are notoriously very like about their IP. But Almantas is 100% correct. If there was a notable moment where they actually had an internal discussion about, well, we're just gonna let everybody in the video game market have our IP, because they didn't care. Was like they didn't view the video game world as something that could hurt them. So they said, we'll just let everybody have our IP, and we'll throw everything at the wall, and we'll see what sticks. Which is kind of bonkers. But that gave us some good games, and it also gave us some interesting mobile games.
I actually think the best Warhammer game that they've made so far is Blood, Teeth, and Shooters.
Blood, Teeth, and Shooters was a very good time. I had a really good time playing through that.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think it is the best game at capturing like what you want out of orc fantasy. I actually think it rules. I think that Metal Slug gameplay is a perfect fit for what they were trying to do. I think it was great.
It was. If you've never played it, I highly recommend it. The campaign is not crazy long, and it's a really good time.
It's a really good time. It co-ops really well. It's Oh, they did a Doom style one. That's good. If a boomer shooter is also a good fit, I think.
Yes, the oh my gosh, I can't remember what it's called. The boomer shooter, yeah, bolt gun.
Bolt gun's a boomer shooter. Okay.
Yes, and it did so well. They're making a second one.
I heard it was very good, but I'm going to say something I know is not going to win me any friends here. I really didn't like Vermintide.
I think it's okay.
But
the first one or the second one?
I played the first one mostly. It did not spark joy. So I've been skeptical when people tell me that like a Warhammer tie-in game is really good. I get skeptical.
Yeah, I enjoyed Vermintide 2 so much more, but like Fat Shark is kind of like a bit notorious of that. Like they have so much passion behind their games, but their games are also always horribly broken when they first come out, and they take and like whenever they add news, like they break constantly and then have to fix it, and then it breaks, and then they fix it, and then it breaks. And it's just a whole thing.
I do think that Total War is a really good fit for the fantasy setting. I actually think it's a better fit than any of the historical settings they've done, because the Total War system has a bunch of constraints on what you're allowed to do with an army and with a nation that prevent you from doing a lot of things that make any historical sense and do work in a fantasy setting.
It was my dream game, like for all my years growing up. I remember playing like Shogun 2 and being like, if they could make a Warhammer game of this, it would literally be the best thing ever.
They went on vacation for a month while it was broken. That's so European.
That's
so
like
European.
That sounds like them.
That
Dude,
rules. That rocks.
It's one of the most like, I'm so happy for them while I'm gritting my teeth American thing of like, why aren't they working?
Why aren't they working in August?
That toxic America, I grew up in America thing of there's no such thing as a month-long vacation.
I support it, even if it's inconvenient for me personally, a person who doesn't get to go on vacation for a month. Well, and I mean, Shark Ray, like, I mean, I don't know. We don't need to get into, like, the whole Total War of it. I've got, like, a whole Total War series of takes. It's just a little bit orthogonal to this. But my take on it basically amounts to the Total War. The things that are distinctive about Total War are often very bad for the things that I think would make a really good history game, but I think they work really well for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And I think that's cool. I'm glad that they're making Total War Warhammer. I have not played super much of it because I look at all of the DLC you can buy for the series and it just makes me tired. And then I just don't buy any of it.
Yeah, that's fair. I think they did a good job with it, of that, like, you don't need the vast majority of it. It's kind of like just, it's, it's a la carte. It's only get the things that are relevant to what you enjoy. But like when people are walking in and looking at it, it's like there's so much.
There's so freaking much. I do play I did like I played like the base game, so I was only allowed to play a couple of like Chaos Nations. And I was like, oh, this is neat. This is cool enough. And I was just like, oh my god, this is like so headache inducing to think of like which DLCs I would buy, and they have like lots of like packaging. And I'm really cheap. I am always on the lookout for a deal. And so if you tell me like, oh, like this will be 40% off if you buy 5 of them together, I'm like, oh no. I'm doing calculus now. This is now more in depth than the game. But that's just me. That's just my own forms of brain damage right there. that's on me. But yes. So this question of like expanding into new areas, right? And I think that's always going to be a bit of a challenge, right? And particularly like expanding into Ind is going to be a really difficult one, because you've got kind of a couple of perspectives you could take on it. And unfortunately, it's very tempting, and I think GW is very prone to taking this because of the peculiar temptations of them as a group of people, is to think about it in terms of modern India. And like we're going to think about the political conflicts in modern India and think about how modern Indian people will think about this. And that's going to be a real fucking quagmire.
Like, yeah, it's really interesting because like they've been putting out some articles about how they created like Cathay. And it's interesting reading of, you could see they definitely approached it with a very like well, like we're inspired by these particular myths and this particular, like, these are the dynasties we pulled the most from, and yada yada yada. But you can also see the hallmarks of like how there are things that they're making because they're thinking about selling this in China. So there are certain topics and considerations they have to make in order to ensure that they're able to effectively sell it in China. So like a good example is that, like, they mentioned one of the articles how they're working on developing what we know as the essentially Cathayan vampires, which, like, we have the vampire counts in Warhammer Fantasy, which are very heavily inspired by just every undead myth and stereotype you could think of. But you can't use those in a Chinese context a lot of the time because the Chinese censorship laws don't allow certain elements of body horror. So like certain concepts of like undeath, so like a zombie with his guts hanging out, or or like skeletons and all of this other stuff can't be done there. So the Jade vampires, which is what we know the bloodline as, cannot just be like vampire counts with a Chinese flair. They have to be something genuinely redesigned because they want them to sell there. And we don't know what that's going to look like, but that also means that, you know, if they make something for End, while hopefully they'll do like what they've been doing with Cathay, where they do a lot of research into various historical and mythological inspirations, but they're also going to have to take into account like modern sensibilities and what kinds of things are looked for or would be seen as insulting or not okay, which is going to be very interesting.
It's going to be particularly brutal in the case of India because there are 6 countries that would be underrepresentation there, right, at a bare minimum. Arguably, maybe 7. So obviously India, but then immediately you run into a problem. India and Pakistan, and then Nepal, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, Bangladesh, and arguably Bhutan, maybe. And these countries are going to have different sensibilities about what is or is not offensive, although I will say that as long as you don't draw an actual map of India and Pakistan where you take a clear stance on the Kashmiri border, you'll probably be okay. That's like the worst one. As long as you don't do that one, you're not going to die. But if you do that one, you might die. But yeah, so here's something I was thinking about. I will just kind of take a slight divergence in talking about like how this commercialism plays out. A game series that I love is the War Game series, War Game, Air, Land, Battle, and so on. And a thing that I actually really want to have a war game that portrays 40K because I actually think it's perfect for 40K style fighting. I think they actually have mechanics that would be amazing for having Space Marines in them. But one of the things that was kind of interesting is there's a Cold War game, and they started adding more nation packs, and they definitely did add them with an eye towards selling them to specific countries. And one of the ways that I could tell that they really did this was that when they had to add nations to the Red 4 side, to the communist side, they did not add any African nations. When they added South Africa to the game, to the blue 4 side, to the NATO side, they could, the most logical case would have been to add Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe and Angola have both fought South Africa with modern military equipment, with MiGs and T-62s, and they've won, by the way. South Africa has like one of the worst military records out of any country on the planet. They're actually shockingly bad. Staggeringly incompetent military. Angola and Zimbabwe and Mozambique have all every single country. Well, Congo would be on the blue side, for one thing. Congo would be on the blue side. Congo is also an incredibly incompetent military, but Mozambique and Angola and Zimbabwe have all fought hot wars against South Africa with Soviet equipment. So they would have been all really good fits. But they didn't. They added Finland and Yugoslavia, because they had to think about where are the audience members. And they didn't really have any audience members they didn't really have any sales existing in Zimbabwe and Angola, though they did have sales in South Africa. Yeah, they added. No, I'm talking about what they added to Red 4. Yeah, Finland and Yugoslavia were added to Red 4 as pairs with as paired against Israel and South Africa, which is goofy. But it's my point more is like you're thinking about where you want to actually expand your market share. And a game that's been very, very big about this. Actually, I should have brought this one a better example. I forgot about until now. Age of Empires 2, which is continuously supported despite being 25 fucking years old. And when they add new nation packs, they are definitely thinking about this. When they add Indian nations, they were thinking about Indian players. When they added Southeast Asia, they added a ton of Southeast Asian nations because they have a large Southeast Asian player base in the game already. They already had a bunch of Vietnamese and Malaysian and Indonesian players, so they added, Burma and Malay and Vietnam to the game. And so you're thinking about that when you're thinking about doing these expansions. Which just makes me think, like, God, they could have... Why not Vietnam and Warhammer? Why not?
We do have a Southeast Asian nation known as Koresh. But Koresh is particularly interesting because they're not a human nation. Instead, it's the Blood Naga of Koresh, which are a group of serpentine creatures that are... they're aligned with chaos, but we don't know the specifics of it. There's actually been a really, really cool fan project that we did an interview with on Lorebeards, and I've been continuing to chat with them and supporting their work, of a group of creators that have a very strong background of knowledge, and many of them are from Southeast Asia, or they specialize in Southeast Asian mythology or history and such, and they've been making their own version of Koresh, and it's been so cool. It's been so cool. It's horrific. Some of the creatures they've adapted into Warhammer are genuinely horrifying.
Hell yeah.
But it's been very cool to watch a group of really, really gifted artists and writers and fans kind of take hold of the Warhammer version of their own culture and try to lead the charge on what it could hopefully look like. And it's genuinely fascinating to watch, and very, very cool.
Sorry, Fangs, that's something really funny. Yeah, that is something that I think about as like this would be the thing that you're really involved in most of all, would be what would be the runway or the pathway for fans from and input from these countries getting input into the Warhammer system.
Well, and that's kind of one of those things where GW is once again kind of... The legal department at GW are an interesting group of cats.
Okay, that's always a bad sign.
Make very bizarre decisions that depend a lot on what era of GW we're in. So they'll do very weird things from time to time. But when it comes to something like Koresh, for instance, the best thing for people to do is to just make it and try and get eyes on it and talk about it and try and get it to be as much in the public discourse as possible, because Games Workshop has the advantage and disadvantage of that all of the official writing comes from this vast collection of authors, a good group of whom don't even work for GW. They're contract workers. So they're authors that exist outside of GW, and GW contracts them to write like their Black Library novels and stuff like that. But then they have like some stuff they do from the head internal studio. But ultimately they are affected by what they see online and what the community is doing and what the community wants to see. And the history of Warhammer is very funny in a sense of that you will constantly find things about how like, oh, I wonder how this little note that references this particular historical event or what have you got into Warhammer. And it's just that the author who happened to be contracted that day saw like a movie or played a video game or did something where he was like, oh, that's super cool. And he just decided to put it in the game. And it just slips by people. of that, like, because Warhammer doesn't have a, despite a lot of people think it does, and it really doesn't. Warhammer does not have a good, what is often referred to in creation systems as like a Bible, of the sense that like if you like work on a cartoon show, there's usually a quote unquote Bible that you're given that shows like, okay, here's the art style of the show, here are the core philosophies of it, here are the core truths of it, and this should be what you're working for to create everything you put in the universe. Warhammer doesn't have that, so it's a lot more wishy-washy, and things are able to sneak in far more easily than they would for like Lord of the Rings, for instance.
Yeah. Well, well, I mean, that Lord of the Rings has a fairly straightforward answer on that one, which is that, obviously it's the Tolkien estate, right? There's a specific guy.
Yeah.
There's a specific guy who wrote these things down. There's not really much question about who wrote it and why and stuff like that. But when we've got the question of, like you said, there's a canonicity question, and so I think that you've got here. I think that's a kind of interesting point, right? That like, if players who were fans of Koresh enough were willing to just keep pushing hard enough, they could basically eventually force their way in through attrition.
In the good old days, GW would GW had a bad habit of just stealing stuff. But after those days, they would like actually like buy up people. Like if they saw someone making something really cool, they'd be like, "Oh, cool," and they would just buy them, and like get their ideas legally and just add that into the universe, which was fine, cool, awesome. But GW has gotten so. GW unfortunately has a very, shall we say, Nintendo relationship with a lot of its community, where they're so protective of their IP when it comes to fan interaction that they tend to err more on the side of like squashing things and like ignoring them, instead of being like more modern video game companies where they embrace their communities, if that makes sense. And it's annoying, and it mostly comes from their tabletop their view, where because they make tabletop minis, they see the modern world as a threat. They see 3D printing as a threat. They see people making their own tabletop games as a threat. So instead of being like, oh, we love people interacting with our universe and making their own things and stuff, they're currently going through a phase of, did you buy that from us? You can't use that unless you bought it from us. If it's not officially ours, that's illegal. You can't use that, which is not great.
I would describe it generally as being penny wise and pound foolish, would be my usual way of thinking about that. And I have my own thoughts about that as a businessman and as a content creator and all these things. I have my own kind of like, it's not my strategy, right? It's not how I think about things. I guess I may as well say like my own kind of perspective on this, right? Which is that the thing that's going to be limiting for most for us, for me as a streamer and for GW as a model company, is getting people invested in the basic product in the first place. If you are viewing yourself as a model company, which is possibly not even the smartest way for GW to think about things. I don't know what their actual books look like, but I could easily believe that licensed fiction is absolutely stomping the model lines as a source of income for them.
I think nowadays their model line is still their highest profitable thing, but their licensing is a serious chunk nowadays.
Yeah. And the margin on is obviously like way better because it doesn't involve physical product. But if you are viewing yourself as a model making business, the real buy-in, the real challenge is getting people invested in buying models in the first goddamn place. That's where you're really going to have the challenge, is like your competition is much less Conquest Last Argument of Kings, even though that is a direct competitor. Your real competition is like Fortnite and stuff like that. It's that kind of thing. And this is this is the thing I think about all the time, is that, like, strictly speaking, you are a competitor to me, but your success is my success, right? Because it's driving people to want to listen to people vibe and talk about history and politics and do this, as opposed to going out and getting drunk at the bar. Like, and so I think that they are being foolish. That is kind of my whole point here. I think that the G-dubs guys are being a little bit silly.
I agree very much. And I think that something that me and my co-host Andy Law, who worked for them for quite a few years, have talked about is that they, in my opinion, they are at genuine risk of getting themselves into a Kodak situation.
Ooh, that would be a bit, yeah.
Which, you know, being so obsessed with we sell minis, that they're allowing all of the other parts of their company that have more potential to slip by them until, you know, 3D printing or some other tabletop company comes along that has just a much more consumer friendly outlook. And because right now they don't have very many good genuine threats, but if there were to be one, they would be they could easily put themselves in a very bad situation.
And they have they court threats is the thing, is like there are companies.
They have sued the hell out of people in the last like 2 or 3 years, and they've lost almost every case.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Most people are not willing to do like Pal World levels of stupidity, right? Like it's most people are not willing to.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they like to go after people that are using Space Marines, but they don't own the term Space Marine because they didn't come up.
They're fucked. They're fucked. No, that's older than the company by decades. No, they're fucked.
Yeah, but that's
sorry for the swearing. It's just like I don't respect.
No,
it's like so foolish.
No, I love swearing.
That was to my audience. I'm trying to swear less as an uncle.
I was like, the only reason I haven't been swearing as much is because I wasn't sure how you felt about swearing.
Swearing I am in general okay with, but I think I am trying to work on it because I think it is funnier if I swear less.
That's fair. That's fair.
I think that I've got a bit of a Mr. Rogers vibe, so I'm trying to do it a little bit less. Also, I do have a bunch of uncles. Not a bunch of uncles, a bunch of nieces and nephews. And so they are getting to the age where they can actually remember things that I say. So
the danger zone.
I need to start being careful so I don't get yelled at by my various sisters-in-laws. But yes. So that is a... So yeah. So... Yeah, you're right to point out this. Like, there's oddly defensive company. They're a very conservative company in a lot of ways, and not like, I don't particularly mean politically. Usually, people when they hear like it's a conservative company, they mean like they endorse Republicans for president. No, that's not what I mean. I mean like their whole strategy and approach to the world is very grounded in attempting to not like rock the boat. They are much more worried about losing customers than about gaining new customers.
Yeah, which, like, to be fair to the people that sometimes have to make these decisions, unfortunately, in my opinion, they're a publicly owned company and they have shareholders, and line must always go up.
I mean, the thing that is interesting to me about GW when it comes to like culture war stuff, we're gonna go straight into the fucking politics here. Why not? When talking about culture war stuff, is that GW is like, even by the standards of a mass media company, even compared to like a Disney, they are nakedly mercenary. Yeah, like these guys, these guys would bark like a dog if it got them $1, right? There's nothing there. There's no, they have no loyalty to their product line other than its profitability over the next maybe 2 years at most.
Yeah, a lot of people, especially that are new to Warhammer, any of the Warhammers, not just fantasy, any of them, come in with this idea of like, oh, the lore is sacred. It's like, no, it is not. The lore is here to support the minis, and they will do anything and everything to make you buy that new toy. They don't give a damn.
So when they decided that it is just canonical that Eldar trans their genders all the time, that's because they thought that the woke bucks were worth more than the not woke bucks. Like that's it. Like, that's it. Like,
The only reason they have not made female Space Marines yet is because they think it'll piss off too much of the Space Marine audience.
Yep.
Who they think is a boys' club.
And they're looking at this as a calculus problem. They're checking the temperature on that every week. They've got 2 VATs. They've got 2 numbers in there, and one is like the number of people who are going to buy female Space Marines and the number of people who will buy fewer Space Marines because there are female Space Marines. And they are looking at those, and if it flips over one day, we'll have female Space Marines.
Yeah, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, look, GW's making a statement," when they reprinted like the super shitty quote from one of the old roleplay books. That was like, Space Marines can only be men because only boys have the right, like, set of genetic predisposed blah 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 to become Space Marines, which is like a very, very not scientifically accurate thing. Like it was like just flies in the face of science and came off as very like super kind of messily anti-trans. Of being like, oh no, there's an inherent property of someone that is born a man that cannot be recreated through 40K science, even though the science they were referring to was just wrong and has been wrong for a long time.
Oh God, as a like God, people. Oh my God, people stop trying to do science about gender. It's gonna get you killed. Like unless you're one of like a few thousand very specialized people who all lost your jobs 2 months ago.
Yeah, but it's like, but you had someone at GW went, oh, you know what? I think there's going to be money in us allowing custodies to have female models instead of just being males. And they went, okay. And then they literally came out and said, custodies have always had girls. The end. That's the lore now. Bye.
Yeah, that's the end now. Yeah, they're going to do that. I personally, as a very left-wing person, I personally prefer that they only have male Space Marines because it emphasizes that the Emperor was kind of a chud. Like, I think that makes sense to me. Like,
he just wanted to look at muscly dudes all day. That's all he wanted.
I mean, the influence of prosomania, to get really historical here, the influence of prosomania on all of the things that led to Games Workshop existing is very big, and it's just really hard to forget just how obscenely, incredibly homoerotic prosomania was. And like that's fundamental to early Space Marine stuff. I remember some of those 80s book covers that are just like Tom of Finland covers. Like they were just doing Tom of Finland stuff with Space Marines for a while there. But that's like my own aesthetic tastes on what I think makes more sense with the themes. And if they're going to do female Space Marines, not because they're going to do female Space Marines because they think the models will sell. That's it. That's literally it. That's literally the only reason that they're going to do it or not do it. And if they don't do it, it's because they don't think it'll sell enough. It's just a calculus problem.
Yeah,
it's just an accounting problem.
The big thing a lot of people I think misunderstand about like what I do for a living is like, for me, it's not about knowing all the lore so that when something happens, I can scream about how it's not lore accurate and it sucks and it's horrible and GW is the devil and yada yada. No. My job revolves around GW releases like a retcon or new lore or something changes, and I look at it and go, all right, how can I take this new stuff and carefully graft it in with the old stuff so that I still have a story that makes sense?
Yeah.
Which I find just a lot more appealing and also much less stressful.
I think this is a better form of engagement, right? And I don't know how much is I've always been kind of interested in this, right? Because there's a form of engagement with fiction that's is really invested in like feeling morally good about what you're consuming. And I find it really strange and off-putting as a critic, right? I would say as a consumer and as a critic and all these things. I think this is a crazy way to live your life. And the fact of the matter is that like, and then people get very invested in the canonicity of things, right? I think about this partially from like, I actually rather like rom-coms. I actually do like rom-coms. I don't know what to tell people. I think they're fun. And I think romance is a really cool theme to explore. It's a very heightened emotion. It's something that we tend to be really stressed out about as individuals actually living in the world. Oh, wow. And the thing that my computer just slowed down really, really badly there for a second. I was like, oh no, did I just crash my machine?
You are still here. You are still with us.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Yes, I'm still here. I got really worried for a second there. And I think that it's I think this is a weird way to engage with fiction, but whereas I should say, hold on, what was the one I was thinking about? I got distracted. I got in the cycle there. I've seen discussions around rom-coms where the concern is which ship becomes canon. And I'm just kind of like, I don't give a shit, man. If you think that this ship is better than the others, you can just write fan fiction, and that's cool. Like, this is a fine and cool thing to do. You can write it. You can write your own original stories. You can consume other ones. But I think that it's worth, engaging with the fiction that it is, and then figuring out how to make it make sense and figuring out what thematically works is going to be a more interesting way of engaging with the actual canon than getting mad about it, than giving yourself an ulcer over figuring out like why it should be this more type of canon. I was very incoherent there. No.
I understand what you were saying. And something that I've noticed in like nerd communities that I don't think is a good part about nerd communities, and something that I always encourage people to work on when I notice, is this deep obsession with being right.
Yes.
Which is so unhealthy. Because I remember, which I'm gonna say this, but I don't mean this in like a derogatory sense of that. One of the things that's very, very noticeable when you're like, when you hang out at like a Warhammer club, is that you will often have people come into the community, especially on the younger teenage side of the spectrum, who are like, you could tell from their social skills that they have like a form of like autism that makes it difficult for them to like understand social cues.
Yes.
And you will see them try to discuss things like lore, or like playing a game and like they start losing, or like interpreting a rule. So like how a rule works in the game. And you can see a lot of these nerd cultures, which, to be very fair, a lot of nerd cultures tend to have people that are more isolated in their personal lives, and don't have as much experience. If they were like, more heavily involved in like athletics or other different kinds of ways of socializing compared to nerd spheres. And they don't have the social mechanisms to be able to lose gracefully.
Yes. I do also, I mean, and let's be even more controversial here. I think that masculinity plays a huge role in this.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a gender element to this where masculinity teaches people that like you need to win at all times, and like the point of a conversation is to win in it. And this, I understand the impulse because I hate losing.
When I play like Age of Sigmar or Old World Tabletop, I don't want to lose.
Yeah, like I would prefer to win. If I had my druthers, I would be winning. And well, I think in the long run, I don't tend to care all that much. I don't look back on my like 0-10 record in Age of Empires 2 with that much shame. I certainly don't look back at my 1-123 record in the tutorial of Dark Souls with any shame. I'm actually quite proud of that. But also, I actually was not tilted during Dark Souls. I'm so bad at Dark Souls, man. It's so funny. But I was having a good time. Chat was having a horrible time. Chat was very unhappy with me. But in the moment, I feel bad about it, right? In the moment, I'm trying to win. Whenever I'm actually in the game, I am trying to win. And you do kind of have to teach people how to lose gracefully. how to not tilt out. And it is fun to me to see the different ways that different games affect this. But like trying to treat a conversation as something that you just win is very frustrating.
Yeah, well, and I think we see this a lot, especially in the States, right?
Yeah.
Where in the United States, a lot of our culture revolves around the idea that if you lose an argument, it means you're stupid or you've lost, right? It's a competition. It's not trying to get to the truth of the matter. It's about proving that you won. So you're right.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is not good for us.
Yes.
And has had some very negative cultural effects in recent years.
It was rough. It was rough. And it is a very rough thing in the United States. And I come from academia, right? And in academia, that's like kind of like the lifeblood of it, right? Is like you win arguments.
Yeah, but I think for me, what is so heartbreaking about it is that it's led to people I know, and I think a lot of Americans get so hung up on the win-lose idea of debate that instead of being able to talk to someone in academia who just knows more than you because they've just spent more time with it, instead of spending time with them and learning and going, oh, I didn't think of it that way. Oh, I've learned something new. They go, well, I'm not going to talk to that snub-nosed. I'm not going to talk to an academic. They're brainwashed. Or I'm not going to talk to an academic because they make me feel dumb. So I hate them and I'm not going to talk to them. And they just don't learn anything.
And it's not great. It's not great. It's a part of an issue where we tend to view the quest for truth through this lens of fighting, right? Through this lens of what do we call it? Adversarial. There we go. Adversarial truth seeking. Because that's what our court system is, and we're all very, very invested in the U.S. court system because the U.S. is an extremely litigious society, and also courtroom dramas are one of the few types of dramas that we make a lot of that don't involve anybody getting murdered all the time. They do involve people getting murdered a lot, but it's not like the fundamental thing that is the driver of the conflict is not violence but argument. Whereas like action films, right, it's all about murder. And so this is, well, this is this lens that we as Americans are growing up with and is constantly reinforced to us that the truth is the result of two people who are willing to go to the goddamn hilt defending their argument. And like, this is not actually very productive. This is not actually very good for a lot of things. It's useful in, again, certain circumstances, and it is what our court system is built around. But sometimes it's better to just, like, sometimes the other person's just right.
And to tie all this all back, this extends to lore.
Yes.
That, like, I kid you not, I have talked about things in Warhammer lore, and I've given takes where like here's the evidence, here's why I feel this way about this particular topic. I've gotten death threats over interpretations of lore.
Oh, I don't doubt it at all. I don't doubt it at all. It's entirely possible that like the other stuff that I write about is like spicy. And it is entirely possible that you have gotten in like more actual trouble than like I have gotten into for like opining about like the Syrian civil war kind of stuff. Like it's which is a much bigger deal, right? But like nerds are crazy. Nerds are crazy. Nerds are crazy, and I mean, non-trivially, this is part of the thing about the type of lore, the death of Star Wars, for example, right? Like the Star Wars fandom.
Oh, gee, I'm so glad I'm not in that community, dude.
I was so for glad. A long time, and then I'm fully out. I'm fully out. I'm done. I'm done with them. Like I'm done.
Like,
I'm done with it.
I stay out of the 40K community because it's got its own demons and it's just not my scene. But like Star Wars, you could not pay me to get involved in that community.
Oh, truly awful. I will say this kind of funny that I think they've actually become a lot more chill in the last couple of years because Star Wars has sucked so much so consistently for like 10 plus years that like it's now just like yeah, it's very much changed. But yeah, like nerd communities can just be fucking like this. Oh my goodness. Oh, actually, no, Tohu Vavo, no, this is actually, I forgot about this element because I can't believe I forgot about this because it's one of the most fascinating things to me in the world is like, okay, so you are primarily a content creator, right? Would that be accurate to say?
Yes.
That's like your main thing. So
that is my full-time job.
Your full-time job is that you make videos and put videos up on YouTube, and people pay you Patreon money, and you make a podcast, and their opinions about different parts of Warhammer lore, right? That's the fair way to describe what you do?
Yes.
Okay. There is not just like one person. There are multiple people, like dozens of people who do that, but just literally for one Star Wars film.
That's so sad.
There's a person who has put out, I think, 600 hours of video, of edited YouTube videos just complaining about The Last Jedi.
I feel like I would just have a heart attack if I was dealing with that much stress. Like, your job is just stress at that point.
I mean, there are people whose job is to stress about other things as well. That like that's been like a well-tapped market for the very competitive and lucrative market of complaining about World of Warcraft has been a thing since like 2005. Like it's like
sure,
as old as you.
But at least like you're complaining about like evolving things.
Yeah, that's my point. That's where I'm going with this. That's where I'm going with this. It's one movie. Like, how are you not
healthy for your brain? That can't.
How are you not bored to death? I am bored to death thinking about it. Like, that's the part that's always been
staggering. The money must be wild, dude. Like,
it's been a really funny thing.
Incredible.
It's been an incredible thing where like you can find like you can find YouTube channels where they have like 1,000 views per video talking about like refrigerators or bicycles or something like that, and then they put out like one rage video about The Last Jedi that gets like 18 million views, and then that's just like all the channel for the rest of time.
That's wild, dude.
I didn't watch Last Jedi because I made the decision when the Star Wars sequels were coming out that I'm not going to watch new Star Wars until they stop making Star Wars. Like,
see, I watched.
Once it's a complete work, I'll get invested again. But until then, I don't
watched the first new one, and then
I did not like it at all. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, The Last Jedi came out, and I did go see that because my family wanted to go see it, so I was like, yeah. I'll go with. And I was like, ooh, this is not for me. So I just never went, and I haven't seen anything since.
I saw Force Awakens, and I was like, that was not very fun. That was way too much like dick sucking, way too much self suck for me. And I watched Rogue One, which was okay, and I was like, I'm just gonna wait until they stop making Star Wars. I'll come back to this later. They openly said that they're going to keep making Star Wars until they've milked it for all it's worth and it stops making money. So I'm going to encourage that to happen faster.
Disney, man.
I'm gonna do my part in encouraging that to happen faster. Yeah, no, right. Those Skywalker, I don't want to do. And you know what? There's enough other good media out there. I don't.
I don't got the time, the effort, or the money. You know.
Yeah, I am struggling just to get through the stuff. Like the nonfiction that I love is like enough of a lift, and I have nothing else. There's plenty of Star Trek to watch.
It's like for me, I am a very easy to please person. Like I am not a critical viewer. I'm not.
Okay.
I have to turn on a critical lens to like analyze like Warhammer stuff, like because I'll read a book and I'll be like, oh my god, this is so exciting, this is awesome, this is what, and then it'll be like once I finish it, I'm like, okay, I need to go back and like analyze the lore ramifications of this, and that's where I'll start like picking it apart. But like when I do my first reading, I'm just having a blast, and like movies are the same for me. Like I can count on one hand, I think, the amount of movies that I've seen where I was like, I didn't enjoy this.
I tend to be pretty undercritical with movies. I'm not gonna lie. I do tend to be relatively low criticism on movies because I'm a
So
books
no,
guy.
I just turn my brain off.
Well, I'm a books guy. And it's like I don't like notice things other people don't notice. Like I'm not good at noticing bad acting. I'm just like not like I'll just fall for it. I'm just like yeah, sure, why not? Like acting has to be like truly bad.
Yeah, well,
for
like
me to
I meet
notice
people
it.
that are like, "Oh, I can't see this actor as anyone but this character," and I'm like,
Oh,
"I
that's very
don't
weird
have
to
that.
me.
I
That's
don't have
very
that
weird to
problem."
me. That's very
Yeah,
weird to me.
I like
That's
whoever they are in the movie. I'm like, okay, that's who they are now.
I find it super strange to me because I actually rather like theater. And like in theater they just like do that to you. They're just like
Yeah, I'm a big musical guy, and musicals are the same. Like you just
Yeah.
have to accept that's who the person is now and move on.
Yeah, and it's like okay, like the set's not convincing, like whatever. The last play I saw in person was a Royal Shakespeare Company production of King Lear, and they just had people of different races playing like brothers and sisters. Like, it was just
You know,
fine. Like, you just roll with this. Like, come on, man. Like, just
yeah, it's the
roll
same
with
thing.
it.
Like, yeah, musicals are the exact same. Of
Yeah.
like, a character is going to be played by someone completely different between showings because
Yeah.
they like there's like different schedules and like somebody's sick or whatever, and they're going to be like they might like at best they'll be the same gender most of the time, and
Yeah.
you're just like, okay, cool, yeah,
Get
like
over
just
it.
roll with it.
Get over it. Just roll with it. Whereas, like, I still know people who are mad about Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan.
Oh my god, it's
It's
like
he's too old.
listen,
It's like, come on. Like,
I am
he's an
here to
actor.
suspend my disbelief. What part of suspending disbelief do you not understand?
Just come on. Like, and again, like, I am mostly viewing this from like a book
Actually, okay,
lens.
I've got a good example for you for Warhammer that always makes me laugh.
Yeah.
So in Warhammer, one of the things that led to me getting angry emails about, and I don't care and I never will,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
was that GW, in my opinion, did a very, very good thing, which is that when Bretonia, who is they're very heavily inspired by Arthurian mythos, but they're French, which is funny in and of itself. But they have a lot of really cool things going on, and in the old lore, for no reason, literally no reason, the knights were only allowed to be men. So only men could be knights. Women were not allowed to do battlefield roles, but the women could receive the blessing of the Lady of the Lake, who is their primary deity, and they could become damsels and prophetesses, which were the wizards. And the wizards were only allowed to be women. Boys that demonstrated magical capability were like vanished at a young age, and it's implied that they were like murdered or taken to another realm or whatever. But we get an answer to it later, but that's not important. So anyway, so for the longest time, Bretonia was like, oh, only women can be or only men can be knights, women can't. But then we had Warhammer's version of Joan of Arc, Rapunzel de Leonis, and Rapunzel is a woman who is a peasant. She was a shepherdess that Bretonia gets invaded by chaos, and they're having a really bad time. The king is killed, yada yada. And she hears the Lady of the Lake calling to her and is like, oh, and she goes to like a rundown Grail chapel. She takes up this dead Grail Knight's sword, and she ends up leading the people of Bretonia against chaos and gets to duel this big, horrible Chaos Lord, Karn the Blighted, and she kills him in one-on-one combat. And hilariously enough, despite the fact that Warhammer is usually supposed to be more of a grimdark narrative compared to real life, she gets a much happier ending to her story than the actual Joan of Arc does.
I need to run to the bathroom. I am extremely amused by the implication that the British are chaos, though. Or I should say the English are chaos. That's very funny.
Yeah.
But I'll be right back.
Go on.
Yep.
Actually, I think I'm also gonna do that. That sounds like a good idea. He's taken like 3 potty breaks. I can take 1. Excuse me for just a moment, a chat. All right, back. This has been a fun chat. This has been a very good time. Dark elves are not Canadian.
I am back, but Dark Elves in Canada is very funny. Dark Elves Canada
it is a popular meme, but they're not actually. They're stolen directly from both the High Elves and the Dark Elves are ripped almost directly from Michael Moorcock's Melobonians.
I mean, we could make this like way more hideously problematic and say that the Dark Elves are based on old 19th, 20th century racist pulp fiction about Native Americans.
Funny enough,
we can make this really bad.
They used to have native humans that were just that in Warhammer. If you go back to 3rd edition Warhammer, but that was also back in the day when we had pygmies, which did not age well and got pretty heavily scrubbed out.
Okay. So we were talking a little bit about before about the fact that they just like don't represent. They've just like kind of like punted on representing Araby, right? They just like punted on it completely. And one of those things that I think about is that there is very little fantasy representation of ancient Egypt that I am remotely satisfied with. And I think Khemri is
like the Tomb Kings?
so bland. The best fantasy representation of ancient Egypt that I have seen is actually Age of Mythology.
Fair.
And I wish more. It's something that like really struck me because like I played a lot of World of Darkness games, and the World of Darkness Mummy series is like very clearly whenever the writers get around to we're going to try a revival of Mummy, they clearly give up like 1/3 of the way through the book and are just like desperately like copy pasting to try to get their way through the finishing, to hitting the word count, and it's. Okay, yeah, Tohu Vavohu is correct on that one, yes. But they did at least portray ancient Egypt as a society of living people who have beliefs and arguments with each other and, like, do things.
I think there are some elements of the Tomb Kings you would like, but it requires, like, delving pretty deep into, like, their build-up. As opposed to what they, like, currently are.
Yeah, it requires... You have to seek for it. You have to do archaeology on them.
Yeah, it relies much more heavily on like the story of like Kalida and like Lamia and Libarus as opposed to like Cetra over in Kimmery.
Yeah, but this hit me when you're talking about that I can't think of a single fantasy fiction representation of pygmy peoples that doesn't just suck horrendously.
Oh yeah, the Warhammer one was bad. Like, you know, like they were, to say that their models were racist and their art was racist is such a grotesque understatement of like just imagine the most offensive Jim Crow cartoons you can possibly think of, and it's worse.
Yeah.
Because they also they're also not human. They're technically a different species and are like vaguely halfling. Also, fun fact, they weren't where actual pygmy should have been, which is, you know, Africa. They're in South America equivalent, so they're in Lustria for some reason.
So Shiro no Koge asks an important question that we should have brought up here. Pygmy peoples are an actual meta category of ethnic groups, Like, this is an actual people who exist in real life. There are actual ethnic groups that exist in actual real life that are mostly associated with, like, the Congo area, like Central Africa, that are exceptionally short. Usually, like, average height for the entire population of, like, 4'8" kind of thing. And this is not a matter of, like, dwarfism being disproportionate. This is, like, the full adult height of these peoples are very short. And again, this is why I'm saying peoples repeatedly, is that this is a genetic quirk that has certain geographic concentrations. I believe there's also some in Southeast Asia. And there isn't anything that's particularly culturally specific about these different groups of peoples. And they have been portrayed in a lot of colonialists' proto-science fiction in some really, really racist ways. And this is the thing about all science fiction and fantasy, right? Is all science fiction and fantasy inevitably does come back to works like King Solomon's Mines, and these adventure novels from the 19th century. And that means that if you are going to sell these things to a 20th, 21st century audience, it's worth taking a few hours to, like, make it a little bit less racist.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're awful too. They're cannibalistic. They don't have any technology except for blow darts.
This is Sotek is talking about
awful.
the portrayal.
It's really awful.
The lore version
Warhammer
of these.
ones. The Warhammer ones, yes.
Yeah, the Warhammer ones, not the real ones. The real ones are just people. The real ones are just fucking people.
The real ones are just people who also had. They were often subjected to, because of their height mainly. They often got, like, taken to be put on display in, like, circuses and zoos and stuff.
Human zoos, a real thing. Popular fantasy TTRPG.
It's not a proud moment in human history. But anywho, all that aside,
where I was going with that is that, like, I think it would be really cool to have a. I think it would be cool if somebody could figure out how to make a cool, awesome pygmy representation in one of these settings. That would be very cool.
There has been some rumblings that Games Workshop is wanting to explore, because the Southlands, which is the equivalent of Africa, we don't know anything about it. Like, we know, like, the Tomb Kings of Nehekara, which are up in, like, the desert region, like, which would be like the equivalent of, like, North Africa, like, you know, your Egypt ballpark. And then you have Araby, which is west of that, but we don't have any, like, African anything. Like, we know there's some lizardmen down there, we know there's some Skaven down there, but we have no idea who lives in the jungles. We have no idea. Like, we know that the humans that would become Nehekara originally migrated from there, so we know there are people down there, but GW just never touched them. And there's been rumblings that it's something that they're considering, to, like, really try and create a Warhammer version, a Warhammer faction inspired by various African myths and histories and stuff. And I think, if I remember right, there was some talk of them leaning on, like, the Zulu Empire. But we'll see if that ever comes to fruition. That's a Titanic maybe.
Titanic maybe. And it's hard to say what they're actually going to get done, right? Because I will say, like, if I was in GW shoes, I would be cautious, right? I would be very cautious about making plans for the future, because, you know, let's think about it as if you're a Warhammer executive here for a second. The closest I can think of, if you're a Warhammer executive and you're looking at the history of your company over the last 20 years, 10 years ago, the company looked completely different than it does today. And how do you know that the things aren't going to swing right back? Right? That's the thing. Is like how do you know that they're not going to swing, like, right back? And so I would understand like a high degree of caution about like big expansions. I would be very cautious about doing like big expansions. But that's kind of where I'm going with that. It's like I would be myself in that situation. I'd be like, and I lost my train of thought. There's a chat happening in the side chat about like thinking about like non-European based popular fantasy TTRPGs, and I guess like fantasy TTRPG is such like a small world that we're really dealing with a really tiny pool just in the first place.
Yeah, it's like the thing with like Trench Crusade and Warhammer Fantasy being revived and where it's going is at least for me, it's very exciting as a tabletop fantasy fan of seeing that we're finally starting to see like explorations and representations of groups that have just not existed because so much of fantasy tabletops have just been European.
Yeah, so part of what I'm thinking about here is like I'm going to be limited in my ability to see these kind of things because I'm an American and I speak English. I have some bad Japanese, but I don't live in Japan. I'm not doing tabletop wargaming in Japan. So like there could be Japanese, Chinese, Indonesian fantasy settings that are extremely popular in those countries that would be totally invisible to me.
Well, like I even think about like I think about how cool and amazing a lot of which sadly I didn't like most of it hasn't been that well explored until relatively recent years because of all sorts of reasons of like how fascinating, unique like Native American history and mythology is.
Okay, I've been on a bit of a Native American history kick the last couple of years. I've read some very good books about Native American history, and I'm actually kind of like a small heated thing about the wargaming thing I have right now is that I'm actually like a thing that is annoying me right now is how many medieval or ancient era based skirmish games there are, as opposed to like rank and flank, which is a much more realistic portrayal of combat from those eras. Whereas like a lot of war games, not just tabletop games, but also video games, what they actually end up approximating is not any warfare style that was particularly common in Europe, but what they really do is they really end up mimicking Northeast Woodlands warfare. Like Saga is much more, not even Saga particularly, Saga kind of, but Infinity is much more like this, and a couple of the other skirmish games, I'm trying to remember the names off the top of my head. Mordheim is actually much closer to Northeast Woodlands combat than it is to anything that happened in Europe.
Oh god, I love Mordheim. Mordheim's so good.
People love Mordheim.
Bring it back, GW. Bring it back, you cowards.
I do wish they'd bring back more of their specialist lines. Mordheim is like such a low ask too, because it's like it's mostly using the same models. I think Emperor's Armpits is in here, and he's in an active Necromunda campaign.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, because the Age of Sigmar specialist games are super fun. They're very good.
My local Blood Bowl is in some ways the purest GW game.
No, Blood Bowl is hysterical, and it has no right to have survived and been as successful as it is.
My actual favorite game that GW has ever made though is Gothic.
Oh, interesting.
I love BFG. What a crazy fucking game.
Yeah, a lot of I would say with Mordheim, that's probably the most popular, like, bring it back that hopefully people one day do.
And I'm also a psycho, and I really liked Epic 40K. I really liked Epic 40K more than base 40K. I think that the simplifications that they made to the rules to keep it like moving and keep activations fluid, I think were huge improvements on the 40K formula. Yeah, I'm a sicko, and I like those 10mm games.
That was a huge tangent. I meant to finish my thing about Rapant still in this.
Yes. Let's go.
Okay, so we got this Joan of Arc character.
Right.
When you read the lore, there was nothing exceptional or crazy about her becoming like oh, she's a woman that becomes a great powerful knight. She does, but she doesn't even like end up drinking from the Grail because she ends up not needing to, despite the fact like she's such a badass. She kills the Chaos Lord without drinking from the Grail, which is insanely impressive. But anyway,
Yeah.
But one of the things that was always so strange from a lore point of view is that Rapunzel de Linas rises up and shows that these great, powerful knights can be women. Mm-hmm. And yet, from a Bretonnian historical point of view, nothing changes. Rapunzel shows up, kills the big bad Chaos Lord, a new king is elected, she is given the dukedom of Lyonesse to rule as duke or duchess, and she lives a life and dies of old age. And nothing else changes, which was always weird to me. It was always very strange, especially because it just didn't make sense. And people would always come and say, oh, well, men are stronger than women, so knights should be men only. And it goes, okay, well, there's a problem here. So there's a god called the Lady of the Lake who empowers these knights who go on these great epic quests, and when they impress her enough, improve their true of heart, yada, 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 nonsense, even though there's definitely a more sinister nature to what's going on, but we don't have time for that. They are allowed to drink from the Grail, and they become a Grail Knight, which they're basically, like, extremely superhuman. Wildly superhuman. It does not matter what is in your pants. It does not matter what your genetics are, because it's magic.
Because it's magic, because it's magic. And it's... So, I'll just kind of make this was actually interestingly.
Well, the quick final thing is that so GW comes back, Warhammer Fantasy comes back, and they come back to Bretonnia and they said, oh yeah, men and women can be knights because that's what makes sense. Yeah, especially because the Lady of the Lake is in reality an elven deity, and the elves are very, very. There are very few differences between the. They have very low sexual dimorphism. Like most humans can't.
Good vocabulary there. Good vocabulary check. There.
Oh, well, thank you. Like most humans cannot tell the difference between a male and a female elf within the setting. And the elven gods also don't care or worry about things like that. There is no such thing as a god in elven culture that favors like one gender over the other outside of one particular circumstance. But and also the world of Warhammer Fantasy does not have the history of sexism that our world has.
That's correct. It's, and I mean, so this is something I've talked to Lady Saffron about a couple times, which is you can also just have a different history of sexism, right? This is the thing this is the one thing I really want fantasy writers to like really avoid is treating your own histories, your own particular culture's type of misogyny as a universal truth. I am actually kind of comfortable with like societies having different ones. And I think it's actually an interesting thing to have it be such that in the case of Warhammer, the elves have a different approach to just have a different gender concept, have a different set of gender norms than humans. And isn't the average Warhammer elf 6'3"? Dang, that's impressive.
Oh, they're taller than that. Like elves are they're
6'3"
very
is
tall.
huge.
They're scary.
6'3" is huge. I
would say probably average. Yeah, 6'3", 6'5" is probably roughly correct.
Yeah, you got me at 6'4" and Inari at 6'5". So these are
it's very normal to encounter elves that are like over 7 feet tall.
Holy crap! Okay,
they beanpoles.
They beanpoles.
But they're also like when they're done well, like when they're lore accurate, they don't look human at all. Like their faces have very like their eyes, their facial structure is very, very different. To like what a human would have. They're not supposed to just be humans with pointy ears, which sometimes, unfortunately, that's how they get interpreted because people get lazy.
I mean, it's a different fantasy settings have different theories about elves, and I think a lot of people, when they engage with these concepts with the case of Warhammer, they kind of just they just kind of import their theories about elves from to a certain extent,
very much.
To a certain extent, Tolkien, but more so I think from D&D, which is what I was doing. Right, I was doing that right now because D&D elves are actually slightly shorter than humans. In 3rd edition, at least.
For us. They're tall boys.
So like the Navi from Avatar, nice.
Not quite that big, but so like here, I'll chat won't be able to see this, but I'll post like just a couple of like pieces of like what I consider good art, where like they really lean into like they have these like narrow, more almond shaped eyes, and they have an almost like very fey, and like their cheekbones are so carved that like you could only mistake one for being human at a very extreme distance. If you were close to one, it's like no, there's very little human about that.
It's interesting to see like different settings have different ways of interpreting this, right? Because my favorite fantasy setting overall, I've barely touched. I've managed to go almost over 3 hours in a lore discussion without mentioning my favorite fantasy setting, Glorantha. Elves in that are plants.
I've never heard of that.
Have you heard of King of Dragon Pass?
I have not.
Okay, that's the video game that's set in it. There's a Rune Quest and Hero Quest are the tabletop games set in it.
Okay. Yeah. Now I'm caught up.
Yeah. Elves in that setting are plants. Like they are plants. It's not like
that's
metaphorical.
Cool.
They are plants. And there's some elves that it's an actually really funny thing where like the elven culture is like being an elf is defined by the fact that elves are just constantly having race wars against other types of elves. But elves will distinguish between like, are you like a deciduous tree versus an evergreen tree versus like a saltwater type of plant, but they will not distinguish between like some elves look basically like humans, but like slightly alien looking and with like green skin or reddish skin, like they're just kind of like pointy-eared humans. But then there are elves that are just Ents.
That's actually very cool.
And those will be members of the same tribe, right? They'll be members of the green or the blue or the red tribe or the black tribe of elves. And so they're more similar to the very human-looking elves from an elven perspective. Even though from a human perspective, they look completely insane.
Yeah, there is a lot of that in like the wood elves. Like, the wood elves get into things like that because there are parts of them that are like bound to the forest and it does things to them, but they're a exception rather than a rule. This is actually a piece from one of the most recent elf books, and like I don't like this because they just look like humans with pointy ears.
Okay, are you sending it to me in our DMs?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's just a person. This is a person. I can open that up and show that on my screen.
But anyway, so when Games Workshop came out and they were like, oh yeah, Bretonnian knights can be men or women because it makes sense. That is literally how it makes sense. The amount of people that got enraged by that lore change and were like, oh, Warhammer's so woke. Warhammer's woke now. It's terrible. It's garbage. How dare they change this? How dare they allow women to be knights? And it was like, okay, not only from a lore standpoint does this make infinitely more sense. This is a weird thing to get mad about, guys.
It's
not a good look, dudes. It's not a good look.
It is not beating the allegations of being
yeah.
A weird,
so when a lot of those people
loser.
left the community, we celebrated, and the community was better for it.
I mean, this is one of those things that like I think Warhammer is not like prepared for. The GW is not really prepared for as a culture. Is that sometimes losing certain members of your community is literally good. Right, like sometimes some of the people who are like your long-standing community members are active impediments to your community. They're like actively negative advertising. Yeah, and they're just like it's hard to acknowledge that. It's something that like I struggle with, right, as a content creator. Is like, what if there are people who I don't see anybody suspect of this at all, but people in my chat who might be like driving people away. But like it's a possibility, right? And it's like a thing you have to think about. And like I have had some people who I've kicked out because like I don't need this kind of energy around here. That's
yeah. I mean, I think that's a especially like when you're driving sales, or even as a streamer, you're trying to like survive or like build an audience and stuff. It could be that trap. Like we've had that, I know, in our community, where we've had people come in who started throwing down red flags real quick, and it's like, yeah, no, you're out. You're out.
You're out.
Be gone. But I've met like some streamers that like get nervous about like having abusive or bad people in their audience.
Yeah, no,
because they're like, but what if it's like, no, just you can't. Look, if you allow, you know, an infection to get seeded, like you're gonna have problems in the future. It's better to deal with it now.
Hold on, I was fact checking something from one of my chatters. I've got the 3.5 player handbook open right in front of me, and elves are shorter than humans.
That's wild.
They're shorter than half elves.
That's very strange to me from a Warhammer perspective.
Yo, no, the Warhammer ones that you describe are huge. They're enormous.
Yeah, they're lighter than humans, but
the gracile in the biology terminology. Elves in Warhammer are like 6'3" plus, as on average. Like our humans, by the way, just in case people are wondering, average American male height, which is going to be taller than average human height overall, because 1, Americans are tall, and 2, we're measuring men's differentiate out from women, is 69 inches. It's very easy to remember.
Nice.
So 59, so 5'9". So 5'9", whereas so 6'3" as an average is enormous. And again, Americans are taller than average. Sometimes people forget that. Americans are one of the tallest countries. We are not the tallest country, because I believe that is Belgium.
I was gonna say, I know we get our butt whooped by some like Nordic places.
Belgium and the Netherlands are the top 2, and the Nordics are also a bit taller than us. We're probably non-trivially tall because there's a lot of Nordic genetics in here. Very true. That's and American height has been declining for the last couple of years, probably because of immigration from shorter countries, like Honduras, for example. Yeah, the Belgians are really tall. The Belgians are weirdly very tall. I believe the Belgians are in fact taller than the Dutch. The Netherlands are the tallest now. Okay. I've seen it like flip flop a couple times over the last couple of years. 6 feet's so huge.
See, if I look at the most recent player's guide for like height for generating a character in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Okay, so they have it where, so their recommendation, which is just for the average elf, it's not for a particularly crazy elf. It's supposed to be, average height for an elf is 6'5", according to the most recent roleplay game, which is right. Yeah, that's good.
That's so tall. And see, it's funny because I remember playing an elf in a D&D game where I described him as the biggest goddamn elf you've ever seen, because he was like 6'1".
Yeah, like I know like Corhill, who's one of the famous high elf characters, is like, he's a monster for an elf, and I think he's supposed to be like 7 foot. I want to say he's like 7'8" or something just obscene. Like he's a giant. He's huge.
And it's funny because like I'm just thinking about this, like the reason why humans don't get like that much taller, right? Is like why like humans don't get like 8 foot plus tall. It's like it kills you.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Your
like,
heart goes whoa.
The tallest human to ever live died at a very young age because his nervous system couldn't keep up.
Yeah, it's spooky stuff.
He got a small cut on his leg, and it went gangrenous, and he couldn't tell because your nervous system starts to fail when you're over 8 feet tall.
That's very tragic. Yeah,
which is why we're also never going to get a person that tall again, is because when people are on track to get that tall, we give them surgery that prevents them from growing any taller. Because of this reason.
I have a young cousin who, I don't know how tall he's going to end up being, but he is still in. Oh my god! I think he's a sophomore in high school now. And he's 6 foot. He's like 6'5", 6'6". Like, he's huge, and it's like we're genuinely worried about him.
Yeah. And no, Blue, it was Wadlow. He was an American. He was 8'11". And like, yeah, we give people surgery if they're on track to like significantly break 8 feet. Like,
yeah, Coriel might be even taller than that, but I want to say he's in the upper 7 foot. I don't think he's in the 8 foot.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't remember what got me to that point.
I was talking about like how elves are just huge in this setting, and it's an interesting thing, right?
What I was gonna say is that what I like so much about it is that like they're very light. No, Corhill actually has like the muscle mass to back up his height. Like is one of his kind of gimmicks is that he's actually quite muscular. So he's surprisingly like heavy and strong for an elf. But the dwarfs in our setting are also really fun because in Warhammer, dwarfs are so much wider than people expect them to be. That because in most settings they're just like shorter humans that are kind of muscly. In Warhammer, they are as wide as they are tall in many circumstances. Like if you have a dwarf that's like 5'6" or whatever, he's probably gonna be at least 5 feet wide because of just how stocky and muscly they're. Like their hands are so much bigger than human hands.
Yeah.
Like humans cannot wield dwarf weapons because what a dwarf could hold in one hand very easily, a human would need at least 2 hands to hold because their hands are just so much bigger than ours.
Which
is cool and fun.
That's a neat one. I'm just gonna take a brief aside to talk about again, Glorantha is an insane setting. Glorantha is a completely insane setting. Dwarfs in that setting are they're descended from the concept of stasis. Is their like fundamental metaphysical makeup. And one of the things that's really interesting about this is that dwarves are immortal so long as they follow the rules. They will not age as long as they follow the rules, but it's actually not entirely clear what the limits of the rules are. And so there's a continuous like testing of the boundaries of like, what are things that you can do that are acceptable heresies versus just like malfunctioning.
That's
they're very mechanical. The dwarves are the dwarfs as a society believe that the world is a giant malfunctioning machine. The fact that time moves forward is because the machine is broken.
That's super cool. That's a very cool concept.
They're insane. Their plan to fix the world is they have made a giant capstan, like a thing that you use where you rotate and it raises something. Like an anchor, right? They've made a giant capstan that is trying to pull a continent out of the ocean onto the earth and flood the rest of the earth.
I was gonna say with some of their assumptions about life, they do sound like they would be very villainous.
They're extremely villainous. A huge percentage of what they do in setting is if humans start discovering new forms of technology, they go and murder them.
That's hilarious. I love that.
They're crazy. they're so evil. They're so awful. Because of the fear around what qualifies as breaking the rules, a large percentage of all dwarfs are literally born right next to a station on an assembly line and just spend thousands of years on that station on the assembly line.
That's very funny.
It sucks. Being a dwarf sucks in setting. They're awful. That's
a very awesome, unique take on what a dwarf is.
Yep. They're also deeply, again, they're afraid of breaking any of the rules, so they only eat canned food. And this is all really, it's worth highlighting for anybody who's at all confused about the technology level of the setting. Dwarfs are at like 18th, 19th century level technology. Everybody else is Bronze Age.
Very cool.
It's very cool. It's very cool. They're such dicks. They're such dicks. But yeah, I have wondered a lot about the Warhammer Fantasy dwarfs because I am very dwarf coded as a person. As a person, I'm very dwarf.
I believe it.
You've met me in person. Like you can see it. You saw me after I'd cut off over 3/4 of my beard.
Oh my good lord.
Nano has seen me with Nano saw my full length beard. I am, and you did not see me like drinking, where I'm drinking like scotch and beer.
Warhammer dwarfs they're a hoot. They're very memeable, so like a lot of people have memes about them, which unfortunately has led to some people thinking the memes is the reality, which is not true, but they're very easy to meme on. Because they were kind of the idea. The original dwarfs were very heavily inspired by like curmudgeonly coal miners on like northern England or northern UK, that just want to like they work in the mines, they go home, and they just want to go tinker in their shed in their backyard and don't want anybody to bother them.
Very Scottish.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're very funny to a lot of people because they're genuinely very fascinating, but from a surface level, they're basically they're a people that they take binding words super seriously. So like to them, saying you're going to do something or giving any kind of form of oath is not only contractually binding, but it's like spiritually binding. So like if you tell someone you're going to do something, you do it because your honor demands that you fulfill your oath. And to not do it will bring shame not only upon you, but also like your entire clan, and can cause genuine problems. Like if you have unresolved oaths when you die, it is up to your kin to make sure that they are taken care of, because otherwise you don't get to enter the afterlife. And you have to like wander a form of purgatory forever. Instead of going to like the Great Feasting Hall with your ancestors. But because of that, it leads to a couple of very fun quirks about them, where like they take concepts of grudges very, very seriously. Like if someone does something to offend them, they have books. They have the book, the Damas Kran, which is the Great Book of Grudges, but also most dwarves keep their own personal book on them. And it's if you do something to insult them, they will stop what they're doing. They will write down exactly what it is you did, when it happened, and then they will basically go visit like a lore keeper, what have you, to be like, what's the appropriate like recompense for this insult, which could have been completely unintended. And most of the time it's going to be something like most of the time it's either violence or it is a payment of some kind. Like you have to pay them, or you have to do something to like make things square again. And they keep like super meticulous notes. Like there's no word for forgiveness in their language. It's not a concept that they are okay with. To them, vengeance is everything. And they always settle matters, like they settle disputes by always having these like big meetings where someone will be like, so-and-so said they were going to deliver this thing to me by this date, and they ended up being a week late. And they'll be like, well, the reason I was a week late was because the roads that were on their lands weren't properly maintained, and a wheel shattered. And because of that, we had to fix a wheel, and that's why we weren't. And they get like super meticulous about it to like figure out who's at fault.
An incredibly exhausting way to live your life.
Oh yeah. And they are just the most curmudgeonly bunch of goofballs. But on the positive side, they also take concepts of like honor incredibly seriously, to the point where if you do right by them, they never forget it, right? Like if you hold your word, or if you do something for them, they will never forget that, and it's passed down. So like the whole thing with like the Empire in Warhammer Fantasy is that the Empire's founder, Sigmar Heldenhammer, who is the Warhammer, like he's the guy, he's John Warhammer. 40K doesn't actually have a Warhammer, fun fact. They shouldn't be allowed to call themselves Warhammer, but whatever. So Sigmar, when he was like just a young, like in his late teens, early 20s, I think he's late teens, he saved the High King of the Dwarves, who had been captured by some greenskins, and he saved him, and was like, hey, no problem, like we hate orcs, we were hunting these guys anyway. And the king was like, no, like we have to, I am in your debt, so we have to make this right. So he swears an eternal oath of friendship with Sigmar and gives him Gal Maraz, which is the Warhammer. The dwarfs originally made it, and he gives it to him as a gift. And because of that, 2,500 years later, many millennia after Sigmar's already dead, the dwarfs still consider the Empire to be like strong allies. And if the Empire's like, hey guys, we need help, the dwarfs will answer the call. Now they might bitch and moan about it. And if the Empire's done something to make them mad, they will demand proper recompense or will do something drastic. But like, they tolerate and put up with a lot of humanity's goofiness because Sigmar did right by them so well his entire life that they were like, all right, these guys are our bros, and it's bros for life. It's bros for life. There's an actual object called the Warhammer. So Galmaraz, which is it's known as the Warhammer. So you'll often have people, Galmaraz is its full name, or if you translate it to English, it's called Skull Splitter. But you'll have people in the Empire be like, for the Warhammer! And that's the particular hammer they're talking about, because it's wielded by the Emperor. Because it was originally wielded by Sigmar, but once Sigmar decided that he was going to abdicate the throne and wander off because he was an old man, he gave the hammer to someone else, and it has been passed down. So whoever the Emperor is at any given time, they are supposed to be wielding Galmaraz, though the Empire has had a lot of civil wars and other problems over its long history that has led to issues from time to time with that. But that's the general gist. And it's a pretty cool magic hammer that is kind of insanely overpowered. And if you whack someone with it, they are almost certainly going to die.
I mean, I would say that's true of most Warhammers.
True. But this one, like, you can whack a creature that's like the size of Godzilla and it's going to hurt it.
That's, yeah. I just, yeah, I mean,
But yeah, anyway, so yeah, dwarfs are cool. They have a lot of funny things about how they're very good tinkerers. Like, they're like master tinkerers and masters of technology and stuff. But culturally, they're very conservative. And they very much live by a culture of their ancestors were always right. And because they're not religious per se, but they have what are called the ancestor gods, which were the first ever dwarfs. And they were insanely amazing, kick-ass awesome.
Yes, as happens in lots of conservative mythologies, yeah.
And so the ancestor gods were awesome, and the dwarfs were like, oh, when the ancestor gods were leading us, we were in our golden age, and ever since they left, things have just got worse. Which is not technically true, but dwarfs will argue with you about it. So the dwarfs believe that if it was good enough for the ancestors, it should be good enough for you. And if you're making something new, how dare you think you know how to do something better than the ancestors? Which leads to this very big cultural divide among the dwarfs, where younger dwarfs in particular are very fond of trying new things. And like for the Engineers Guild, inventing new weapons and new technologies and stuff, which causes the Longbeards to very grumble and pull at their beards in consternation, because how dare they make this newfangled technology that, why can't they just use the old things that were good enough for our forefathers and mothers? But you know, there's the reality that the world is changing, and the ancestor gods didn't have to deal with things like Skaven.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing that always struck me as one of the really strong tells. This is me revealing like old game thinking logic rather than like rather than a lore logic. Is that in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, in the editions I was playing in, the Empire had better cannons than the dwarfs.
Yeah. But they're also more prone to misfiring. They are
more prone to misfiring, but they do have it. The extra 12 inches is worth it. An extra 12 inches of range is worth it.
Yeah, the dwarves, they developed in some fun ways as like the editions continued, because they started letting them have more and more crazy stuff, where it's like now dwarf war machines we have things like organ guns and gyrocopters and gyro bombers.
I remember when the gyrocopter was first released. I remember that. Yeah.
And I love the dwarfs. They're very, very fun. It's because I enjoy that instead of it just making it where it's like, oh yeah, the dwarfs just don't like new stuff. Instead, they made it into a cultural dilemma, something that they constantly wrestle with.
I mean, that's kind of like a genuine thing that drives me nuts when I'm reading any sort of like fantasy fiction is when they don't have that, right? When they don't have those kind of internal conflicts that like if you have a society that takes a stance on anything, you're going to have other members of society that take other stances. They're going to fight with each other over these things. It's never, even if there's no particularly good reason for it, just because the fact that one person is taking a strong stance means that there's now an opportunity for people who fight against that person politically to distinguish themselves, right? Like there's always going to be a motive for somebody to have an alternative stance and to propose a new way of doing things. And so your fiction should account for that. That there's going to be factions, there's going to be disagreement, there's going to be people who have differences of opinion. And are dwarfs generally conservative? Sure. But some dwarfs are going to look at that conservatism as an opportunity for distinction, as an opportunity for making their own mark in the world, and as an opportunity for social advancement.
Yeah. Well, and there's, I love that they don't just have, and they show the downsides of that as well. Of like, you have like slayers, you have dwarfs that, because they've been dishonored, they take an oath that they basically shed their who they are, and eschew all armor and basically give up on life. They take an oath that I'm going to go fight monsters basically naked because I'm not allowed to wear armor and stuff because that's cheating. And I'm going to go fight monsters and endless hordes until I die to get my honor back. Which means as a society, they are throwing away lives because of some genuinely ridiculous, absurd values. Of it would be so much better for those people to, seek forgiveness. But that's not a thing to the dwarfs.
And this implies that at some other point there may be some dwarfs who propose that we should that it's like, oh no, like why not do forgiveness? Why not?
And the beautiful thing about Warhammer is we get that with the Chaos Dwarfs.
Yes.
Where the Chaos Dwarfs say you can earn your name back. You can earn your honor back by serving the Black Tower for long enough. Because for them, instead of shaving your head and doing all that stuff, instead they make this metal iron mask and they heat it up until it's practically molten hot, and then they press it on your face to hide your face because of your shame. But if you earn your freedom, they rip the mask off, which of course is super painful and tears your face. But you are now who you once were, and you can, with honor, return to your place in society.
Oh, that's just making my skin crawl.
Yeah, but hey, which is interesting because, like, in some way, that's more kind and forgiving than the actual dwarves. But the Chaos Dwarves are supposed to be the super evil bad ones.
Exactly. It's the Chaos Dwarfs are goofy. I remember when Chaos Dwarfs were a white dwarf only faction and were extremely busted. I remember I had a friend who played Chaos Dwarves at I don't think you could play them in tournaments, but people didn't really care about tournaments as much back then. You'd play them in pickup games, and it was just really ruinous to game balance. They were just really bad for the game balance. Very
they were special in a lot of fun ways.
It was specifically the Earthshaker rule that like you could basically half the movement of the entire opposing army. And
the Tarmacon army. Yeah, they were bonkers.
Yeah, it was not the game was not balanced around anybody being able to do that in fantasy. In 40K, it was less of a problem, but in fantasy, it was a huge problem to have.
Rank and flank losing movement is pretty devastating.
yeah, pretty devastating when a fairly significant percentage of armies have functionally no ranged combat to speak of.
Yeah.
All right. I am running out of juice at this point.
I mean, I think we're at a pretty natural call point, and we've been chatting for a hot while.
We've been chatting for about 4 hours. I'm getting a bit over the con crud. My throat's a little stiff, and I'm a little bit tired. So I am feeling this is a good stop point. 4 hours feels like a good time to end for a frankly pretty intense conversation.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a wonderful time.
I had a wonderful time. I don't know if you feel this way, but I always feel like doing really chatty collabs actually takes more out of me than like a lower intensity type of stream.
Yeah, I agree. Like when you're able to just kind of like be able to just sit and rest in silence because you're like playing a video game.
Yep. Definitely wears on the throat a lot less, but also wears on the brain a lot less. So, Loremaster of Sotek, where can my people find you?
So you can find me almost anywhere. Well, no, that's not entirely true because I'm not as caught up on the newfangled stuff kids are up to these days. Also, I'm so sorry if you're the pie. Thank you for the sub. I did not notice that. That was an hour ago. I'm so sorry. Thank you. But you can find me mainly on YouTube and Twitch, as well as like Blue Sky and X or whatever. Yeah, doing lots of stuff this week. I think we're going to be playing Final Fantasy tomorrow. But my podcast, Lorebeards. We also are doing one tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you'd like to come by and check that out, me and my co-host Andy Law, we're going to be talking about the magical institutions of learning in Warhammer. So like the colleges of magic and how all of the other nations and factions and races teach their wizards.
I am actually pretty interested in that because I how do a Skaven do a school, for example.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Skaven.
Because I imagine Skaven School is a challenging place to be.
Yeah. To say that they have more of a, I think Skaven would be more accurately described as a very, very dangerous and paranoid apprenticeship program as opposed to traditional schooling. But yeah. I think we will probably talk a bit about Grey Seers and Warlock Engineers.
Yeah, Warlock Engineers was a lot of what I was wondering about, because Warlock Engineer, one of those things that was an interesting benefit of playing as the Skaven in the editions I played was that Warlock Engineers always got one spell. It was always the same spell, whereas you had to roll for other mages, and so you didn't know what you're getting. Yeah. You just get Warp Lightning. You can't tell what you're going to get if you take a similar level of human mage. And that's a big benefit. That's a big benefit that you're much more reliable.
Yeah, they were so cheap too. Warlock Engineers
they were very they were very broken. They were very strong. Very, very strong unit there. And for my part, I am Almantas. I am mostly here on Twitch, but I am fairly active on Twitter. I technically have a YouTube. I am, I think, 200 VODs behind on I just need to like label them and make thumbnails. That's what I need to do. They're uploaded. I just need to label them and make thumbnails. But I'm very lazy.
Man, I hate making thumbnails.
I am like 1 out of every 2 weeks. I get really inspired to make a really funny thumbnail, and then like the rest of the time, I'm like, this is hell. This is a nightmare. And so I think for this one, I just need to like sit down and like make assembly line style ones, because I like half of my streams in total are calligraphy streams. They don't need to have that bespoke, but I just need to do it.
I mean, literally, one of my favorite things about Twitch: no thumbnails.
Oh yeah, no, I'm doing a collab on Saturday with a YouTuber, and he's like, like me, another Twitcher, and a YouTuber, and the YouTuber's like, I know you motherfuckers don't need thumbnails, but I do. So you guys have to send me your PNGs.
Send me your stuff, yeah.
Send me your stuff, or I'm going to lose my mind.
Funny you should mention that I will be putting this VOD on YouTube, so please send me a PNG.
I will. I made the drive earlier today, so I will. You are fortunate in that I can just go through DMs with people and just find the Google Drive.
Good.
In fact, I don't want to copy message link. That's bad. I'll send it to you after this. So who shall we raid out to?
Oh, who's live right now?
I almost sent that to the public chat because I am getting EP here.
So I have 2 VTuber buddies that are live, but I don't think you will have met them. Is there anyone that you?
I'm willing to hear you out. I have my friend Cavalier is doing a partner push, but I just rated her.
Well, they're doing a partner push, so we should rate them.
Yeah, I was going to go either for that or Kayukuma, who you met at Offkai briefly. That would be the other one.
I'm trying to remember that name, and I'm struggling.
Kayukuma is he's a VTuber. I talked to him. I only got to talk to him very briefly. He looked a lot like me, but hotter, which was very upsetting. But
somehow that doesn't help.
No, it doesn't help. Fair enough. But yeah, he's doing Ocarina of Time randomizer.
Well, I think either of those would be fun. So,
well, who do you have? Who do you have who's live?
Well, so I think the only one that I would probably recommend is Melizonde, who is a VTuber.
I know Mel.
Oh, you know Mel?
Yeah, I know Mel. I know Mel. I don't know her personally. I've watched her a fair amount. Melly's cool. But I've known.
And then my only other VTuber friend that's on. Well, that's not like I tried to keep my raids to like people that like not have thousands of people watching. But Cine Ursa is the other one. I don't know if you got to meet Cine at Offguy.
No, I don't know that person at all.
Oh, she's very cute. She's a bear VTuber, and she is one of the most adorable people you'll ever meet in your life. But she's doing some kind of she's doing Monster Hunter stuff. I
think we might go with Kavi because she said she was at the end of Partner Push, but it says Partner Push in her description. Yeah. She said she was done last time I raided her. Let me give the name of the channel to you so you can make your raid message. I put it in our DMs, and I will start my raid. And I'm just gonna make a simple game. That's the simple one.
My chat, y'all could just copy whatever his raid message is because I'm too lazy to make one right now.
Are you a snake or a lizard?
I'm technically a lizard, but Sotek is a snake god, so there's no wrong answer. He's the snake god of the lizard men. So,
okay. So that's actually a better one. Lizard T1 pop. There we go. If you are subbed to me, use that one. And we are going to be going to Cavalier. She's very nice. She does very chill streams. She's a VTuber artist. She has a lot of VTuber children out there in the world.
Oh, that's exciting.
And she is also very owl themed, like I am. She's got a similar color scheme and theming as me. So if you like sexy older women as well as sexy older men, you'll probably enjoy her.
Well, chat,
all right.
Have a good one. Thanks for joining us.
All right, goodbye, folks.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
And my raid is out.